Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Oklahoma City Planning Commission. Before we begin, just want to give just cover a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, if you are not an applicant and you are wishing to address the commission, please make sure that you complete one of these forms. The forms are found right outside at the desk, just outside of the council chambers. And that is the only way that you'll be allowed to speak, is if you complete one of these forms, and so please make sure you do so. The speakers who are coming up to the mic, you'll have 5 minutes to address the commission. We do ask that you avoid any repetitious comments. So if you and your neighbor share the same concern and your neighbors already shared that concern, please don't continue to share that same thing over again. Trust me, we've heard you. We do ask that if it doesn't appear to be the case today, but if you do have a large group, we do ask that you select a speaker or two for the entire group's behalf. Overall, we just ask that you follow the golden rule, be respectful of each other, be respectful of the commission, and be respectful of the process. So with that, we'll begin with our agenda and the receipt of the minutes from the July 27th meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move to receive the minutes of the July 27th meeting.
Commissioner Clare moves that we receive the minutes from the July 27th, 2023 meeting. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner Privet. Please cast your votes. And the motion passes. We're now in line for continuance requests, and we'll begin with uncontested requests.
Item 20, SPUD 1509, defer to August 24th. Item 21, case PC 10893, defer to August 24th. Item 22, case C7410, defer to October 12th. And item 23, case PC 10886, has been withdrawn.
Thank you. Is there anyone here wishing to be heard on any of those items? We will not be voting on or considering them today, so just wanted to see if there's anyone here who thought they were going to get a chance to be heard. Okay, Commissioner Clare?
Move to approve the new continuance request as read. Uncontested continuance request as read.
Commissioner Clare moves to grant the uncontested continuance requests as read. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner Powers. Please cast your votes. And the motion passes. And now we're in line for new requests.
Item 19, case PUD 1958, request to defer to October 26th.
Is there anyone here wishing to be heard on that item? I'm assuming Mark is not here to be heard on that item. Do you have another request?
Yes, Mark Zitzow with Johnson & Associates. I'd like to request item 2 be deferred for 2 weeks.
Excellent. So that's CE 1107.
That's correct.
Is there anyone here wishing to be heard on that item? Item 2, CE 1107. Seeing none, I think we're ready for a motion on the amended requests for continuance. That'd be August 24th for item 2.
Move to grant the new continuance requests, item 2 to August 24th and item 19 to October 26th.
Commissioner Clare moves to grant the new continuance requests as read into the record. That motion has been seconded by Commissioner Meek. Please cast your votes. And the motion passes. We're now in line for the consent docket.
Item 1 is case C7566, final plat of Cambria, Section 1, located south of Southwest 44th Street and west of South Sarah Road.
Is there anyone here wishing to be heard on that item? Seeing none, we're ready.
Move to approve the consent docket.
Commissioner Clare moves to approve the consent docket as read. That motion has been seconded by Commissioner Powers. Please cast your votes. And the motion passes. We're now in line for items requiring a separate vote, and we'll begin with item 3.
Item 3 is SP 577, application for a special permit to operate an above-ground flammable liquid storage, general in I-2 moderate industrial and AE1, located at 6200 Air Cargo Road.
Hello, this is Shane LeBeth, 3241 Southwest 93rd. We're the architect on the project, and pretty simple. We're looking to replace some existing tanks with one new tank, and here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. This is in Ward 3. Commissioner Meek, would you like to begin our discussion?
I've looked through it. I don't see any problem with the request. If any other commissioners have anything? No?
If it's just replacing a previous one.
Yeah, we have two existing, and we're replacing it with one new one, one new double wall tank.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from commissioners? We have no one signed up to speak on this item.
I'll make a motion to approve.
And Commissioner Meek moves to recommend approval of SP 577 to City Council. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner Privet. Please cast your votes. And the motion passes.
Thank you very much.
We're in line for item 4.
This is SPUD 1546, application to rezone 2801 North Hudson Avenue from R2 HL and UC to SPUD 1546.
Is there an applicant present?
Good afternoon, Klaus Ryman Phillip, 2801 North Hudson. And yeah, I'm seeking to rezone the property to allow for the construction of an additional duplex on the back half of the property. And we had HP review last week. They recommended approval with some conditions. I've added those conditions into the MDS. Basically, those conditions were just, if we add off-street parking, it needs to comply with Oklahoma City off-street parking code. And I think the other one was to specify that we're only limiting each parcel, development parcel, to one primary structure, so.
Okay. This is in Ward 2. Commissioner Powers, would you like to begin our discussion?
Yes, I've met with the applicant. I think this is a very appropriate infill development. We walked the site and looked at it. I think that the design of the building itself will have to go back through HP, so we don't need to really talk about that. And I think this is a good project. I was wanting to see if there was anybody else here who wanted to be heard on this item.
No one signed up.
Unless there's further discussion, I'll move approval.
Commissioner Powers has moved to recommend approval of SPUD 1546 to City Council. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner Govine. Please cast your votes. And the motion passes.
All right,
Love
thank you.
this project. Good luck. We're in line for item 5.
This is SPUD 1548, application to rezone 1103 Northwest 11th Street from C4.
Hello, Drew Cunningham, attorney for the applicant. We have a single lot, a little bit over 4,000 square feet, that's currently zoned C4, and we're wanting to rezone it to R3 via SPUD so that a single residential dwelling can be built on the lot. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. This is in Ward 6. Commissioner Govine.
Sure. I have reviewed the application. I know there's been a number of other developments proposed on this block, which were far, or not, maybe not far, but more intense than this. This is going from C4 to R3 with really all of the R3 restrictions retained.
That's correct.
5-foot sidewalks are included. Maximum number of buildings is 1. Maximum drive off of 11th is 1. I don't have any concerns, but I'll certainly turn it over for other discussion or if there's any members of the public to speak.
We do have one person signed up to speak, but happy to take questions from commissioners. Are there any questions, commissioners? Then I think we'll hear from Thomas Vaught. Can you please give us your name and address for the record? You have 5 minutes to address the commission.
Thomas Watt from 1121 Northwest 11th Street. The owner of this lot is Cheyenne Copel, also known as Desmalchi LLC. This person is notorious for owning problematic nightclubs in Norman, in Midtown, in downtown, include everything from murder to just out of lines behavior. It's doubled compared to even the other nightclubs. The bars at the end of our street, Good Times and Zumac Bar, are also owned by him. That's the next door property. During the construction of the Zumac Bar, the construction debris is now on the lot that's in question to be rezoned. So my proposal is that we need a lot cleanup because this man does not do the correct thing. We don't just need some zoning, we need a little bit of enforcing with this type of person. The lot is not able to be mowed due to the construction debris that was put there by his own construction crews. That's been the case for like the 6 years that he's owned these two bars. I would say once a week, the music is played not at a neighborhood bar level, it's played at a nightclub level. The music is played behind Zumac Bar, outside at a nightclub level. So it's worse than a nightclub because it's not contained within the building. It goes throughout the neighborhood. I walk my dog. I've heard this music as far as Walker. I can hear it a quarter mile away. My dog, it scares my dog. My niece, she comes over to spend the nights on the weekend. She can't sleep. I can't give her an explanation for why this music is so loud. It's disturbing others. And this is a free fix. He just needs to follow the basic zoning laws regarding the music. Within Zuma Bar, on this property, the 1103 property, it's become a restroom for the untrained male constituents of his bar. I think there's only 2 low-flow toilets in Zumac Bar. That's not enough to meet the occupancy.
Mr. Vaught, I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you. Now, we are here about the rezoning of the
Okay.
other property, and so.
So on the 1103, the specific problems are the not mowing and the construction debris that's been problematic for so many years. And then I don't know I hope it's a new owner purchasing it. I think it's been for sale in theory for like 2 years. The for sale sign is never in place. It's always laying on the ground. We have a historic strong frontage line of 55 feet from the curb. I want to make sure that's honored because a lot of the new houses, they don't honor that. And then the final thing, I don't know how because Cheyenne Coppell also is known to operate other problematic Airbnbs that are operated as party houses. And because he's already created such a massive disturbance on our block that needs to be curtailed, I don't want an association with this private residence being operated as a Airbnb. And I guarantee you I can get as many of the neighbors to sign on to opposing that as well. So I'm not really here to oppose the rezoning. I'm here to rein in the out-of-control behavior of this neighborhood bars that are not operated in a neighborly way. And the people that come to our neighborhood respectfully and quietly, they're not the problem. I welcome them. And I want the mud hole fixed and the parking on the lawn fixed, and that's for his own customers that are damaging their cars. I've seen 3 or 4 cars damaged, and the same thing with the restroom. There are now 2 porta potties in the parking lot of Zuma Bar, and they're not for construction. They're for the patrons of the bar, and we're downtown Oklahoma City in the 21st century. So these are just, I don't know if the Planning Commission is even the right place for this, but I'm not a part of the law enforcement community, and I think maybe the Planning Commission could just look into these 2 bars and maybe get help with this compliance issues that are pretty out of line. There's probably 30 cars that park off grass. My family owns an extra lot on this block. We care for it greatly. My dad has parked on that lot like one time for one extended period when he was in the hospital and gets a $100 parking ticket because his 2 tires, 2 are on the cement, 2 are in the grass. Meanwhile, every weekend you have 30 plus cars parking in this mud hole, and it's plainly visible from Classen, and nothing is done about it. So I'm really just here on the side of zoning, and there's nothing improprietous about going from the C4 to the R3 zoning, but there's this other outlandish behavior that any help is appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Vaught. And I appreciate you sharing your concerns. I will say this just as a couple of things. Number one, this is being rezoned to residential, and you can feel free to have a seat too, unless you have another comment. Okay. We are.
It says they were gonna build a single
This is
family home.
rezoning
Why are
to
they asking
residential.
for a
So it's going to actually be a less intense use than what the other uses are that are nearby this property that I think are causing you some concern.
Well,
As
right.
far as the,
I was going to say, right now it's vacant, so, I mean, it's causing the problems of a vacant, unmown lot, but I also don't want an Airbnb on there or some other problematic party house that's associated with these bars. And I don't know how to stop that, but if you have any ideas, I would appreciate.
I have two. One, the only way it could be licensed to be an Airbnb is if we authorize it in the uses right now, or if they go to the Board of Adjustment. So
Okay.
we're not including that use
Right.
in this zoning application, so the only other option will be, assuming City Council doesn't take another action, then your other option, the owner's other option would be to go to the Board of Adjustment, which would be publicly noticed, as I understand, right? So you'd have another opportunity to contest that if that action was sought. At this point, with the application that we have before us, this is a less intense use than what he's already authorized to be able to do now.
Right, I understand that. It's really just concerns related specifically to the owner. You know, this isn't an abstract situation. It's a real situation caused by a real problematic owner that's been causing problems down there for 6 to 7 years. That bar that's been there, the Good Times, previously it was Antique Inn and the Antique Lady. For 40 years, no problems. It was operated as a neighborhood bar. Once you change owners, problems began, and the problems have escalated up into our block. So that it used to be Beauty's Cafe, and it was exactly that. It was a beautiful cafe, and our neighborhood is getting better, save for that end of the block. And I wouldn't have, if you asked me 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said the problematic people would be these developers that come in, but that is the problem. You know what I mean?
Understood.
The neighborhood people that behave neighborly, we're not the problem. We're the tax-paying lawnmowers.
Well, I appreciate you, Mr. Vaught, and thank you for coming down
Okay, thank
and
you.
visiting with us.
Yeah, thank you for watching out for us.
And I would, go ahead, go ahead.
My only question is same as Ms. Powers, is the reason for the request is listed in the staff report is to allow a single-family home, but we're
Zoning R3?
R3.
I wondered about
R3.
that too, but that's a staff question.
Is that a, barrier?
Do you all have an answer for that?
I'm sorry, what was the question? I couldn't.
Well, in our staff report, it says the purpose of this application is to allow a single-family home.
So why is it zoned
Then you
R3?
turn, and then you want the SPUD to be in accordance with R3 medium residential, which doesn't make sense. It's like a house.
Aside from the rest of the block is all R3.
It's a house, or could it be like a super quadplex or something,
Yes.
I chose R3 because all of the adjacent lots are all R3, and just wanted it to be consistent with the rest of the block.
But your intention is just to build a single-family home with the
Yes.
occupancy of a
Yes.
single family?
Yes, sir. And that's stated in the SPUD as the number of units is limited to 1. And I would be happy to address a couple of the concerns that were raised by this gentleman.
Well, I think you could do that after we get
Okay.
through with this item, because it sounds like it has nothing to do with the zoning for this particular property. I do want to make sure that I make this comment. We all share your concerns about code enforcement. And so we are upset about it too. I would definitely recommend that you take these same concerns to City Council, because they are the ones who can allocate resources to code enforcement. And that is what is needed, is for us to be able to have a mechanism for you to have those complaints that you have addressed. So, but I'll give it back over to the applicant to answer.
Okay, just like 30 seconds. I appreciate the concern. I agree with what your sentiment is. Frankly, I don't even know who the operator is of the adjacent bars. I understand it might be common ownership, but the operating entity, I don't know who that might be. It is under contract to be purchased by a third party who wants to build a home on it. This process right here is the hurdle before they will close on the purchase so they can build a home. So that's why it's been on the market for so long, is this process just takes a while. And I think you addressed the rest of the concerns.
So I'm maybe more confused than I was earlier. If the SPUD provides for the construction of a single-family home, there isn't any reason in the world why it should be, have an R3 base, or that the bulk standards or whatever else would attach to that should be R3. It just doesn't make any sense. You know, there's something here about signage. You don't put signage in front of single-family homes. I'm not following this.
Yeah, if your intention is for it to just be a single-family home, my recommendation is that we amend this SPUD application to make it subject to the R1 standards instead of R3, unless you feel like there is a reason that you need R3 standards.
I chose R3 because the adjacent single-family home lots are all R3 and wants it to be consistent. That's the only purpose. And the reason it mentions R3 in the SPUD is, instead of rewriting our own unique standards just for this SPUD, in the past, my understanding is you just recite setbacks is per this base
So
district.
now it'll say setbacks per R1 instead of R3.
Well, can we discuss this a
What's
little
the
bit?
difference?
With all due respect, I mean, I don't think it's appropriate to drop an R1 in the middle of R3 and C4 and then have to deal with
The compatibility issues that
of
come
the
from that?
compatibility issues with that when the
Single-family
block is
homes
R3.
across the street.
But-
There are single-family homes.
Correct.
To the
all
west?
zoned R3. All zoned R3.
That's correct. They're all R3
So why should they be
adjacent
more
and
restricted?
across the street are R3.
Because he's going to put a single-family home on it. That's what the SPUD provides for.
And the C4.
If it's a single-family home, why would it need R3 standards?
My view on that is that R3 is more appropriate because that's consistent with the context of the neighborhood, and maybe it will be more dense in the future.
How about R1 with a TE to match
He'll
the
still have to
setbacks?
rezone it. He's got an SPUD that says it's going to be a single-family home.
What? R1
would
match
they?
the setbacks in the neighborhood and call it good?
That's what he just said.
Well, yeah,
But
my view on it is more density is a good thing there, but that's my personal opinion, so no one has to agree with that.
But I don't know that it's necessarily true that that even if we left it as R3, he'd have to get it changed anyway.
We're not
Because
leaving
the
it as
application
R3.
would, if we are leaving it as R3, that's the question, because
C4
it's going to come down to what the actual motion is to.
If the SPUD does in fact say that it's going to be a single-family home, and that's what it's limited to, there isn't any reason for it to be R3.
It says one structure on the site. I haven't seen single-family home specifically noted, but I might be missing.
But it also says free one standing
Right.
signs and 8 feet high, 104-foot display area.
Those, I printed out the email from a gentleman on staff with someone in the planning subdivision, Curtis Liggins, emailed me on Wednesday, said, please return with the accepted red lines before Thursday at 4 p.m. And it was a master design statement with these red lines changes, inserting a couple of things about, just changing some terminology, and then the freestanding sign language. We don't want a sign. We would gladly just strike that from the application.
Great.
But because Mr. Liggins said, make this change before you go to before the planning commission, I said, fine.
Does staff have any comment on this disparity, this issue that we're having right now? And you might, Sarah, address this question that Commissioner Powers is saying, even if we changed it to the R1, if we were at R3, and because the way it's already written, if they wanted to make a change to higher density, they couldn't do it even though it uses R3 standards because it says it's for a single-family home also.
Okay, Sarah Welch, Planning Department. So they originally wanted to apply for R3. That would be consistent with the neighboring property. They don't meet the minimum size standard for R3. That's why they had to do a SPUD. So really the change is to the minimum lot size. Normally for one single-family home in the R3 district, you have to have 5,000 square feet, and they just have barely over 4,000. So that's really the change to the R3, which we would have felt would have been compatible with the neighbors. It's the same situation, R3 next to C4. The difference is, there are not a lot of differences. I think one thing they could do in the master design statement, though, because it does just say one structure, if you want just one home, one unit, you could say one single-family dwelling unit is permitted. I mean, that would be, otherwise, the setbacks are very consistent. The building height is the same in R3 versus R1. The only other difference I can think of would be lot coverage. In the R1 district, it's limited to 50%, and R3, you can, that doesn't apply.
See, then hearing that, Sarah, I'd prefer that we made the change you just said, which is to say it's one dwelling unit, so that way it's consistency for the neighborhood with the setbacks and all of that, and the lot coverage. So,
Nix the sign.
and nix the sign.
Nix the sign.
Does that, we have consensus on that, you
I
think?
mean, I understand that everybody that's on R3 has that ability right now to put a sign on their property, but no, I don't think
I
they
think
will do that.
nixing the
but-
sign sounds like the
with
applicant's
that.
good with, I agree with as well.
Okay.
Right.
But if other commissioners are in agreement that and the applicant, we limit it to one dwelling unit, but keep the R3,
I'm good with it.
I'm good with that.
Does that work for you?
Keep it at one dwelling unit, and then the rest of it remain the same.
But if at any point the property owner wanted to make it a multifamily
Right.
home, they would have to come back and get it rezoned.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. Then I think
So,
we're good.
If that's okay, then, Mr. Chairman, I'll move to recommend approval of SPUD 1548 with the additional, I think, are we going to just make it a TE? I think
Yeah.
The additional TE that says the development shall be limited to one dwelling unit.
And no signs.
And no signs.
No sign.
And striking, was it 9.1, no freestanding accessory signs.
Excellent. Commissioner Govine has moved to recommend approval of SPUD 1548 to City Council, subject to 2 additional technical evaluations. One, limiting this SPUD to one dwelling unit, and 2, eliminating any signage. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner Powers. Please cast your votes. And the motion passes. And I'll tell Mr. Vaught, you should also remember, even if we had voted no on this, it's still going to City Council in 6 weeks, so you should still make sure you're following what's happening.
I like what you've done. I support it. The only thing I'd like to add is because it's a 4,500 square foot lot, to me, we do need a floor area ratio coefficient, I don't want, for an example, an 8,000 square foot home that just keeps going.
Well, I would suggest you spend some time talking to the applicant's attorney to understand exactly what their plans are in the future. And if there are some disparities between what we've allowed in our document, because you have access to the staff report that shows you what all we've approved. But I would recommend you have that conversation about what those standards are, what their plans are, and then remember to talk to your city council person as well in 6 weeks before it goes
Yeah, one
to
of your
them.
staff members gave me some action report, and I do need action on those other issues. So any help on that is also appreciated, so I appreciate you guys.
I'm wishing you the best of luck, Mr. Vaught. We're in line for item 6.
Item 6 is case PC 10896, application to rezone 940 Southwest 59th Street from R1 to C3.
Is there an applicant present? Oh, okay. Would you like to come to the microphone and explain your application, please?
The tenant is,
And please give us your name and address
I
for the record.
apologize. My name is David DeWitt, and I'm the property owner there of 940 and 944. It's one building, Southwest 59th. It's I've had it for 25 years. I never knew it was R1 on that half of the building. Half the building's R1, half of it's C3. It's one building.
That's weird.
So weird.
And so it's been a dispensary and a bar for the last 20 years. New dispensary was moving in, and they got shut down because it was R1. So they're just looking to move it to R3.
You mean we're missing an opportunity to shut down yet another dispensary? You know, Oklahoma City, we just don't have enough of them. But no, I certainly understand. This is in, I'm sorry, this is in Ward 5, Commissioner Newman.
Yes, I've talked with both the applicant and the landowner. I also did a little research. It appears the building was built in 1954 and has always been used for uses similar to C3. It's been that for 70 years, and so I have no objections to updating it so that the entire building's C3.
Agreed. Any other questions, comments from commissioners?
None.
I think we're ready for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of this item as written.
Commissioner Newman has moved to recommend approval of PC 10896 to City Council. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner Privet. Please cast your votes. And the motion passes. Good luck.
Thank you.
And we're in line for item 7.
Item 7 is case PC 10895, application to rezone 2321 Northwest 35th Street from R1 to R2.
Come on up. Please give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Brandon O'Brien. Address is 2416 Northwest 157th Terrace in Edmond. Due to some, I guess, information that came up this morning, we are asking if we can come back on the 14th of September.
Okay.
I guess it's a little bit deeper than what we thought, and we just need a little bit more time to see what our options are.
Sounds like there's some issues, there's some utility issues. Maybe Commissioner Powers, you want to shed some light on this?
When I was speaking to the applicant yesterday, I was actually driving by the property and looking at it and was reminded that there was this huge drainage system improvement through that area. Mr. Lodge thought it might have been as long ago as the 80s, but whenever it was, it kind of rang a bell. And it stretches several blocks, and there are houses that were removed and all this kind of stuff. This is now a vacant lot that was a part of that thing. And as I was asking the applicant about it, he sort of was aware of it, but sort of thought that that was okay. And so I just called Mr. Lodge and asked him if he could get me some information about it. And he was able to do that and provided me with it just before, and that was why I got them together at the beginning of the meeting, so that we could see. If there's anything I can do to help you with this, let me know. I didn't think, on the one hand, it doesn't technically affect the zoning either way, but there's no reason for them to go through this process and pay this money if they're not going to be able to do what they want with the property at the end of it. So I think it's a good idea to take a little time and just figure out where we are.
Yeah.
We knew about everything that was, as far as where everything was at. We thought we had our setbacks, everything correct. Well, I guess there's something attached to the deed that was missed along the way.
Yeah, there's an easement in there probably we're going to vacate.
So we got to try to get that figured out. So
Yeah.
we would like to try to come back in a
Totally
month.
understand.
That sounds reasonable. Other commissioners, do you all have anything else for Mr. O'Brien to take into consideration? Any other concerns about this application? So we can just have heard that before he comes back.
I'm glad you're going to get to the depth of the issue.
That's planning commission humor, guys.
Yeah.
Anything else? I think we're ready, Commissioner Powers.
So I'll move to continue this item to the September 14th meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Powers moves to continue PC 108, excuse me. Yeah, 10895 to the September 14th meeting of the Planning Commission. Is there a second? I think we're
but I will second it.
Let's see if we can get it working. Are we able to provide a second at this point? Okay. Let's do it.
Try again, one more time.
Bear with us on the technology. We're working hard on it.
No?
Well, we can go ahead and do a voice vote if that will be easier to move forward. The motion, again, is to continue this item to the September 14th meeting of the Planning Commission. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner Clare. Commissioner Clare, how do you vote?
Yay.
Commissioner Powers?
Yay?
Commissioner Meek? Commissioner Privet?
Yay.
Commissioner Newman?
Yay.
Commissioner Govine? Commissioner Noble?
Aye.
Commissioner LaForge?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion passes unanimously. Wish you good luck on that.
Thank you.
We're now in line for item 8.
Item 8 is SP 578, application for a special permit to operate use unit 8300.33, located at 219 South Klein Avenue.
Hello, my name is Paul Hale, and I'm the applicant, and I am looking to open up a coffee shop / bar in the area. So if you have any questions, please.
I would love to know how those two things intersect.
So I was down in Austin. I saw it down in Austin, a couple other places. People are doing coffee during the day, and then, you know, as it kind of transitions over the night, start doing drinks and alcohol.
Irish coffee, that's how they intersect.
I guess it's a good
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Not usually how I start my morning,
to get 'em-
Commissioner
try to get 'em
Powers,
coming and
but
going.
you know.
Sometimes it helps, come on. On a Saturday or Sunday, you know.
There you go. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
This is in Ward 6. Commissioner Govine.
Yes, I have no concerns with the application. Are there any other questions from anyone else?
Sounds cool.
Okay, cool.
I
Yeah, I think mostly appropriate there.
The indication is that this is in the Scenic River Overlay Design District. Is that not, would they not have something to say, a recommendation for us? Or is it, that's not what they do?
Even for a special permit?
Yeah.
Without any physical changes to the building being required? Does that matter, Sarah?
Sarah Welch, Planning Department, for special permit uses, those are really the exception to what goes to them for a recommendation. He remains in the overlay, so he still has to comply with all of their regulations and design review guidelines and process.
But they don't, but it doesn't go to them before it comes to us?
This particular application does not.
Okay.
The rezoning cases do, but not the special permit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Seems like an odd thing to leave out because it could substantially impact, I mean, if the uses could change because of a special permit, and yet you have to get, rezoning would have to come through them. Seems odd, but good for you to not have to do that. Commissioner Govine?
I move to recommend approval of SP 578.
Commissioner Govine moves to recommend approval of SP 578 to City Council. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner Powers. Please cast your votes. Motion passes. Good luck.
Thank you.
We're in line for item 9.
Item 9 is SPUD 1556, application to rezone 5424 Southeast 89th Street from C1.
Is there an applicant present?
Nancy Brewer, 5585 North Luther Road in Harris.
Great. Please tell us about your project.
It is 89th and Sooner Road, basically. It's 50, whatever address this is, 5424. We have a Domino's that's interested in it. We have a contract, notice of intent, a letter of intent to buy it. And we've been postponed a little because of my ineptness and so, but they still want it, so we're happy. And that we're going to be able to get this and then go on to the city council.
Okay. Commissioner Privet, this is in your ward.
Yeah. Hi, Nancy. First of all, I apologize for not being able to take your last call. I've had some crazy stuff happen to me recently. Probably better explained offline, but anyways, if I would have had any issues with the way it's written now, then I would have called you, so that's a good thing. I think we got it down to 3 uses, no speaker box. The only thing with S staff is the furthest dumpster spot available. Can that meet the separation? If not,
You're
can
talking
we
about the-
say it, or will it meet? Or can we, push it as far away from the residential house as possible? Is all I'd say. And where it's at, I think, and which way?
The current language on, we're referring to the current language on page 3, item 5.
Yeah.
In the dumpsters, that we're going to be following the code And I guess the question is, where would the code allow
Where
the
it's at
dumpsters to be
now,
placed?
I would like it opposite of there, I think would be a better spot.
I'm sorry, where is
The
what?
dumpster enclosure is closer to the house than, you know, it could be up on the other side of the property, I think, pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably my only
Say
issue.
dumpster?
Dumpster, yeah, they've got a garbage enclosure
Oh.
spot. And all that, you know, it's, you know, the backup, the beep, you know,
Yeah.
the truck
They
and
will-
everything. I think it'd be better
will-
served at the northeast corner.
they'll come
or
for-
northwest corner, actually, or, yeah,
They will come to you.
northeast.
Someone in the city when they get their plan.
Yeah,
together.
we can add a TE and
Yeah.
just say
Yes.
that the garbage enclosure will be located at the northeast corner of the or
Is it northeast or
south-
southeast?
Southeast.
Southeast, I think you said.
Sorry, I keep getting turned around looking at that map, upside down and sideways. No, yeah, but that's it, so. If nobody's here, sign up to speak, whatever, I'm ready to make that motion.
I think we're ready.
So just to be clear,
Yeah.
there's no speaker box at all?
No speaker box at
So
all, yeah.
because that was my concern also,
Yeah,
that maybe
it's-
the whole thing could be flipped so that it would be
Right.
coming in the other way and,
Right,
But-
and there's the asterisk on each one of the uses, and then drive-through call boxes shall not be allowed
okay,
for
okay.
eating, pickup
So then-
windows only.
Yeah, then the dumpster was my only concern
Right,
as well.
yeah.
Okay.
And add a TE, motion to approve application, we're at SPUD 1556, subject to one TE added that the dumpster will be located at the southeast corner of the property.
Excellent. Commissioner Privet has moved to recommend approval of SPUD 1556 to City Council, adding a TE that will require the dumpsters to be located in the southeastern corner of the property. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner Powers. Please cast your votes. And the motion passes. Good luck.
When is the next city council?
Approximately 6 weeks from now. I don't know the exact date, but these wonderful people
Well,
can help you.
Our next city council meeting will be next Tuesday, but your case won't go to council probably for another 6 weeks or so.
There you go. That's the good answer, or better answer.
I didn't hear you.
Yeah, about.
Thank you. We're in line for item 10.
Item 10 is PUD 1964, application to rezone 8049 North Bryant Avenue from R1 and HNO.
Is this the longest you've ever had to wait before making your first statement? It's been 45 minutes,
Oh.
and we haven't heard from you.
I've
Wow.
been bored over there. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant, who is also here with us. The reason for the application is my client wants to build a guest house. When you put a kitchen in a structure like that, it is considered another dwelling unit. It's zoned in a manner that doesn't allow multifamily dwelling. The purpose of the PUD is simply to allow that guest house to be on property. So there are two TEs that I think generally we're fine with, but I think we need some additional language. On TE1, what we would propose is to add the words, "If plating occurs, it shall be in accordance with the subdivision regulations." We don't intend to plat it. Again, this is just going to be an accessory guest house for the user. And then on 2, modify it to say that if the site is redeveloped, all sidewalks shall be in accordance and all the other things that are within that. And then finally, add a TE that the guest house shall not be considered redevelopment of the site. I believe the TEs are really aimed at if somebody were to truly subdivide this, add a bunch of dwelling units. Of course, then we'd want to meet subregs and all those things, but that's not the intent here. If it were to happen later, by baking those provisions in, I think we get to where staff is trying to get to.
David?
Happy to answer any questions.
Staff have any comments on those proposed changes to the TEs? No comments. Okay.
The shop isn't there, but it's allowed by right, though, correct?
Say it again?
What it's now. The shop that is showed on the rendering?
Oh,
The
yeah.
60 by 90, is that existing, or is that?
Yeah, so
gonna
the
be
shop
also-
is not the issue, it's the guest house.
Right, I know.
The shop would be allowed.
Right, but it would be, you know, allowed by right.
Yes, sir.
I'm just saying, yeah. Okay.
Yes, ma'am?
The existing gravel drive that's shown on your site plan,
Yes.
is the apron out onto Bryant actually concrete?
goal would be obviously to get through construction of the entire estate, which would obviously be the guest house as well as the erecting the shop building before we actually pour concrete. The entire drive will be then poured and paved. But with the excess construction activity, I obviously don't want a concrete apron and a concrete drive with repeated heavy concrete trucks and other construction materials driving up, delivering it for the two additional, I mean, only one's a dwelling though that we're building the guest house. No, the current drive, as with most on Bryant Avenue in that section, I mean, this was a kind of it's an undeveloped, in fact, to the north, it's a jungle, basically, right, to my property line to the north, it's completely undeveloped. So, like with most homes on there, all have gravel drive entries. On the entire section from Wilshire as you go up to Britain, there's only a few.
So maybe staff can answer this question
Sometimes
for me.
the
I
city-
thought that was required, that the apron at least be concrete, and the, construction trucks in and out are exactly why I would want it to be. I think they tend to litter a lot of gravel if there's not a concrete apron.
I know.
Barry Lodge, Public Works. I think with this particular location, the driveway's there and has been for a number of years. Now, if they were to come in and they want to build a new driveway, then their approach would have to be concrete within the right-of-way, and they would have to apply for a driveway permit for that construction. But there wouldn't be any requirement at this point that I am aware of that, because it's adding on to the residential development in an unplatted area. The rules are kind of different in the unplatted areas than they are if it's platted or if it's a commercial development.
If they were lucky enough to get a repaving project, kind of like they did at 89th and Sooner, and then provided those concrete aprons.
Yes,
it's an
yeah,
option,
the city
I
went
guess,
through and did an improvement project on
they would
Bryant at
include
that
those and all
location.
that, yeah.
We would build the driveway approach to the city standards up to the right-of-way.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions, commissioners? I'm in full support. This is my ward, but I cannot make the motion.
Yes, 1964.
Including the technical evaluations as read into the record from Mr. Box.
Yes.
The motion from Commissioner Powers is to recommend approval of PUD 1964 to City Council, subject to the amended technical evaluations as read into the record. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner Clare. Please cast your votes. And the motion passes. Good luck. We're in line for item 11.
This is PUD 1956, application to rezone 12266 Woodland Hills Drive from PUD 1787.
David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. This likely looks familiar. It came to you about a month ago. Exact same tract, exact same PUD. After we were done with Planning Commission, it was brought to our attention that the title company created an ownership list that was invalid. It didn't actually cover the subject site. So we had to get a new ownership list, reissue notice, and so we are back here again. As a reminder, this is a multifamily project. The site also will look familiar. There was a heavily contested case on this site several years ago for a mobile home or RV park. No protest came in the last time, of course, because no one got notice. But it's nice that I'm not aware of any protest this time when people did get notice. So we'd be happy to answer any questions. There's no TEs because the previous time we came, there was a TE. We already amended the PUD to incorporate that, so no TEs. Happy to answer any questions.
Was in support before, still in support now. Always worried when you come to us and say the notice is not correct. As much as we have to hear about that from our neighbors every time there's a zoning case that's contested, I think we always hear about notice concerns. So anyway, I hate that happened, but I'm in full support. Any questions, comments from commissioners? I think we're ready. I can't make the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to recommend approval of City Council of PUD 1956.
Commissioner Clare moves to recommend approval of PUD 1956 to City Council. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner Powers. Please cast your votes.
Thank you.
And the motion passes. Thank you. We're in line for item 12.
Item 12 is SPUD 1553, application to rezone 2004 North Martin Luther King Avenue from R301 and HNO to SPUD 1553.
Good afternoon, Mark Zitzow with Johnson & Associates. Address is 1 East Sheridan Avenue. Before you is a case that you heard back in December of last year. We have a local nurse practitioner hoping to open a medical office. He rezoned the property to O1. We've spent the better part of 6 months working with him trying to get a permit. Unfortunately, we're unable to do so because of the residential to office conversion regulations that are in the zoning code. So we're back before you now asking for your approval of an SPUD so that we can obtain a permit for him so he can get moving and hopefully open sometime this year.
Okay, Mark, we did meet about this, so I do want to preface my questions with the fact that I have heard the answer, but I still would you mind sharing in greater detail the issue of why this site's construction has to be, the layout has to be the way that it is?
Absolutely. So the lot to the south is not owned by our client, it's owned by the Urban Renewal Authority. There was a development agreement that he may purchase to either expand his business or build a home. However, Okura technically owns that property today. When converting a residential structure to an office use, the code kicks in additional requirements. Those requirements include parking having to be in the rear of the structure. We have to meet two-way drive standards, so we'd have to have 22 feet minimum. We can't fit that down our side yard. There were other small regulations that popped up, but in order for this property to work and meet the O1, we had to take access from the south off 19th Street. In working through it with building review, we were unable to reach an agreement to allow for a temporary access until he can acquire the property from Urban Renewal. Where that left us was a building permit with one outstanding item being access to the parking via a permanent cross-access agreement. Okura is not in a position to offer a permanent cross-access agreement because of the way that they're set up and what their rules are. So this is what we intend to do. I think everyone's supportive of this. What the SPUD provides for is for us ultimately to take a 12-foot wide drive out to MLK. So if we cannot work this out with Okura, we will have another option to access our parking.
I can't believe you got it through Board of Adjustment. That
So
10-foot variance on the north, that's a big variance.
Yeah, so prior to this, we were not involved in the O1 rezone.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We got engaged after he went to pull a permit and he got back 2 sheets of comments. So we spent the better part of 5 months trying to clear all of those, and one of those was a Board of Adjustment application that I believe Mr. Noble was on the board for, to clear up a setback issue that was also in conflict with the zoning code. So I feel bad for our client. He spent 6 months just trying to operate in that time. He was kicked out of Metro Tech because they were undergoing renovations and there was no longer space. So he went temporarily out of business, is in a new facility now. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to make this right so we can get a permit issued and he can move on down the road.
I guess my question is, and this is a staff question, and I say this with the kindest respect, I wonder how we were even receiving an O1 application to begin with, because it doesn't sound like, based on the current standards of O1, that they could have ever met the access and parking requirements in the first place. Because I do recall, as we voted on this rezone, I asked questions about, can they do this here? Is this development contingent on the development of the property to the south? So I'm wondering, why was that advice, why was that even permitted in the first place?
That is a great question. Is the 12-foot width, is that in the zoning code? Remind me.
Sarah Welch, Planning Department, and that's absolutely staff's error, not even knowing that conversion, that driveway width would be an issue.
Gotcha.
I think that what they went to the Board of Adjustment for was a variance to the setback. So as a residential property, they had a 5-foot setback. As soon as they converted to O1, with residential adjacent to it, it triggered a 15-foot setback, which normally would have been probably okay, but as they add the parking and convert the use, they ended up with a side setback issue too. So unfortunately, the solution is a spud. And as much as we try to get out of and find ways not to do individually negotiated zoning districts, here we are back again. We tried it as O1. He already paid for and had to get a variance on the setback, and now we're back doing a spud anyway. So
Where we're at as an applicant with 3 application fees and going on almost a year of working through this
See,
process.
that's a terrible outcome for me, but I understand. I mean, I know that errors happen and there are these issues. So then who is and this is my last question, I promise, I know I'm belaboring this point. So who's the holdup on the access on 19th? This is Okura's problem, or this is our problem?
Where we're at right now is, in order to release a building permit, what the 8th floor wants is a permanent access easement across Okura's property. The way their regulations work for Okura is they cannot offer a permanent cross-access agreement without putting that property out to bid. They can do a temporary cross-access agreement. We pitched that to plan review, and they rejected that because they said the only way to guarantee that this property has access is through a permanent cross-access. We asked for temporary to issue a permit while we worked through this, and that request was not responded to.
Okay.
So until this is approved by City Council that allows us our drive to go out to MLK, that's what we'll get our permit issued. We'll continue to work with Okura. They have been great. They've been working with our clients since the beginning to try and make something happen for them. Unfortunately, there's just technical code issues that have prevented it from happening.
I'm sure, and I know council will tell me, if I would love to have a discussion regarding why this access is not being allowed. And I appreciate you sharing that, with me, but I'd love to hear from planning staff, and we don't have to do it in this meeting because I know it's not important for what is being requested now in this context, but I sure would love to know from an administrative standpoint why those decisions are being made, because I do feel like it's part of our duty as members of the public in this commission to understand what administrative hurdles our citizens are facing to use the planning department or to use our city services. And so it does cause me concern that from the very beginning, the applicant didn't have proper advice about the right zoning. Then we're having these issues with the access. Like, these are all cause for concern for me about our citizens' ability to use our services.
I'll clarify that it's plan review is the issue, not the planning department.
Gotcha. So I know that's outside the scope of what we can do, Sarah, unless you have a comment.
No, I just wanted to clarify that they meet the requirements to rezone to O1. I think the challenge is that the site's already developed. So once you try to go, like if it was just right, applicant correct me if I'm wrong, but if it had been an undeveloped parcel zoned O1, they could have just designed to the O1 regs. Their issue is they're converting a residential property into an office, and they don't have the space in the room to get the drive width and meet the setback that normally be required. So in other words, I don't believe we accepted an O1 application in error. I think we certainly could have tried to go down that road with the applicant to figure out what hurdles they may face, like you said.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd add to that would be the side yard setback was still not in conformance. So we would have needed 15 feet. The moment we went in for a building permit, whether we had an addition or not, the remodel would have caught that O1 triggers a 15-foot side yard setback adjacent to R1. That's what the variance was for that we went in.
And to your comment that, it doesn't really concern what we're voting on today, it sounds to me like it absolutely does, because if they had been able to get this temporary access while the development was going on, they wouldn't have had to do this. They wouldn't have had to file an SPD. And so it's kind of a big deal.
I think this is a challenge, and to the extent that there are policy concerns, I sure would love to know what we could do or consider that might prevent an issue like this from happening again. I just think it's not a good outcome for the applicant, especially an applicant that's trying to provide a service to the community, a community that definitely needs these healthcare resources. So, but I am in support of this application. Are there questions, comments from commissioners? I think we're just ready for a motion.
Nothing that I can control right now.
SPD 1553.
Commissioner Powers moves to recommend approval of SPUD 1553 to City Council. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner Privet. Please cast your votes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're in line for item 13.
Item 13 is SPUD 1547, application to rezone 4107 North Georgia Avenue from R1.
Fallon Brooks Magnus, 733 Northwest 22nd Street, representing the applicant. So this is old trolley right-of-way that we are turning into residential development with a drive along the south connecting to Virginia and Georgia Avenues. Yeah, there it is. So I spoke with Commissioner Powers yesterday about changing a couple of items in the language for some TEs, but I think mostly it was language things, so I think for the most part we're good to go.
I know this is in Ward 2, right? Can I ask one question to start? Why are there no neighbors here when considering the fact that we had a ton of neighbors the last time? I'm wondering what's the difference across the street? And then Mr. Box brings up the notice issue, and it makes me immediately I'm concerned. But I'm a little worried and wonder if we could double check that no one's concerned about this. But I'll turn it over to Commissioner.
A good part of that trolley right-of-way is already SPUD 1480 also, I would point out.
But those people wouldn't have been, the ones on this side of the block wouldn't have been noticed for that. Not all of them, would they?
So I had the same thought, although I had not had notice prior to the hearing on the previous SPUD 1480, I think it is. So I thought there might be people here today. I had not gotten phone calls in advance of our hearing on that one. I thought they might just be here. I'm a little surprised, frankly, because there were at least a handful of pretty adamant objections. I don't know whether they've gotten used to the idea or what exactly, but yeah, I think it might be a good idea to double check our ownership list. This is a sort of an extension of, it's a separate developer and a separate plan, but it is sort of an extension of the idea of infill along this. I always thought it was like some kind of utility easement. I had no idea it was a trolley line. It seems like the oddest place, but there. And I did discuss it with the applicant's representative yesterday. There are a couple of things, though, that I do want to just make sure that we cover. In my typical efficient fashion, I printed those out and left them in the printer when I came today.
I have the email I sent you.
Okay, great.
So I can read that off really quick.
I wanted to make sure that there were not going to be dumpsters along here. And I guess I did want to talk to staff about that. Make sure that it would be possible for trash pickup to access small blue or big blues rather than do dumpster for this, because I think that would be a really bad idea. So if anybody wants to speak to that for me.
I was just looking at the driveway width is 25 feet wide, and I think that's a standard road width for residential units, so they should be able to drive. And since it is a straight through from street to street, they should be able to drive through there, pick them up. If there's no cars parked and things like that, that's what I would believe would happen.
Okay, great. Thank you. Also, there won't be any signage for this development. We decided to be a little clearer about how many units we're actually talking about, and I'm okay with where we landed on that. What else? What else was there? Oh, the one thing that I was kind of pressing for, but now I'm not sure. Has Mr. Zitzow gone?
Yes.
Because I called him to ask. I thought it would be important for us to specify that the driveways would match up with the ones to the west on that development. He said he doesn't think it's possible for them to. Just the amount of right-of-way they have versus the amount of right-of-way that they have for the other one, that he doesn't think that they will precisely align. So I'm going to leave that to staff to work out at the building permit stage and not necessarily include it as a TE.
Okay.
So I revised the language on that specifically, just to say if possible that they would align.
Okay.
I did reach out to Mark today, but it's commission day, so we're all busy. So I'm hoping to get like a CAD file or something and we can see how they line up. But the TEs that we had discussed yesterday was add a requirement that the drive apron aligns with other adjacent trolley right-of-way developments where possible. Maximum 12 units within the SPUD, no dumpsters allowed. And then we removed the required landscape buffer to the north because that's actually backyard space for these. It was just a line that was left in from the template we used. And then just to clarify the language, because the language said a certain number of dwelling units per acre, we just changed it to say dwelling unit per square foot. So
We're
that,
just going to set a maximum on the number of units.
and it did, it says, it actually in 2 places in there, and it's noted in that email, it says exactly where in the MDS that it was changed. And it was, it's in 2 places, and it says 12 units maximum. That's 2 per lot.
Okay, so
It's also spelled out in dwelling units per square foot, so that the couple of lots that are a little bit smaller would probably only be allowed to have 1 unit, so.
Fallon, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
And these are just clarifying questions because sometimes these images and we were having conversations with a couple of us about the orientation of the buildings. So on the furthest west end, there is end of this parcel. There is a house that faces Indiana, right?
Yes, there's also one on Georgia too.
Oh, okay. So the house that faces Indiana, the setback for them to the first development of you on your parcel, what's that?
That is a good question. It's probably 5 feet, I would imagine.
So it's only 5 feet.
Yeah, and then what did we put in?
And then while you're looking for those answers, then help me understand the setback then on the north side. I was just wanting to make sure we were clear about that, which is exactly why I anticipated we would have very upset neighbors when you've gone from thinking something is your backyard to then only having 3 feet separating you.
Yeah. Well, so we put a 5-foot setback because the adjacent homes also have a 5-foot setback that way.
So at least you get 10 feet.
So it's really 10. Actually, they would
Yeah.
have more. I think it's the back of their lots. So
That
they
makes
should
me
have-
feel better.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
there's a little more setback. That's what the 5 feet was, to create some kind of buffer. And then on the front, I put it at 25 feet so that it aligns just with that property line.
Yeah.
If we need to go 5 more feet, it's up to this guy.
I built the 2 houses on Indiana and Georgia.
Can you give us your name and address for the record and make sure you talk to the mic? My wife might want to hear.
Brandon
She's-
Waller, 7071 Richardson Court.
Okay.
I built the 2 houses on Georgia and Indiana. I think I'd have to go back and look exactly, but there's probably 25 feet from the back of their house to the back of their fence. And so there's going to be a pretty good buffer there already. When I sold them the houses, this plan was presented to them so they knew exactly what was going to be built there. So that's why you haven't had any complaints from just those 2 people. The other neighbors, I'm not sure about.
Yeah.
Right now, that easement's a great place for everybody to dump their trash. So, I feel like the neighbors might think it's going to kind of clean it up just a little bit, so.
And there will be no rooftop patios. Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I have some questions.
Please, go ahead.
So I've got some questions about some math, and comparing 2 different sections of what I'm looking at here. I'm seeing under summary of SPUD application, maximum 2 buildings per lot within this SPUD. I guess, what is a lot in this SPUD?
There's 6 lots with
6 lots.
2 buildings per lot, I think.
6 lots. Okay, so that's 12. But then over here in other development regulations, density, no less than 6 structures. Why no less than 6 structures? It's going to be how many then? It's going to be 30? It's going to be 20? Why no less than 6 structures?
So that there's at least one unit per lot, so that it's developed in a recognizable.
Yeah, Fallon, can you come to the microphone again? My wife can't hear on YouTube if you don't talk into the microphone.
Yes. Sorry, so, this is my thought on it, and this is probably what my thinking was at the time. You see sometimes where you see developments where somebody will buy 2 lots so they don't have to have a neighbor. We want to prevent that. We want to see a pattern of development that's consistent along this block and not going to have like a big gap. So that was the reasoning for that language.
Makes sense.
And then, but we also did put a maximum on it as well.
Okay. My last question is really the math question. I thought I heard 12 units. You're doing exactly 12 units? Is that what it is?
My
No more
plan
than
is to
12.
only have one house per lot. So what I'm going to design and, you know, I'm going to build these out myself will be one house, one lot, and so it'll be a maximum of 6. I think she just wrote that in there in case, you know.
Yeah, sorry. I left it so that we could do duplexes if we had to, because I'm not doing the design on these.
Gotcha.
And I just wanted to make sure we left it open for whatever they decide in the long run. So if they wanted to do 2 detached duplex, like narrow row houses, they could. But realistically, the plan is 1 per lot, yeah.
Sounds like a wise move.
Okay, you might have lost me, but I still had one more question. You're saying 12 units, or you're not. Well, that's more than it says here. Density shall not exceed 22 dwelling units per acre. It's 0.39 acres. That would allow less than 9 units.
So that language has been changed. You may not have the most recent one. That's what I was saying was part of my email to Commissioner Powers yesterday, and it says specifically, maximum 12 units or buildings within the SPUD. We changed the language from dwelling units per acre to dwelling units per square foot to make more sense.
Okay, rather than belaboring it, me figuring out all these different lots versus units versus buildings versus structures, I think this is too much behind these people, even without them not here to complain. This on their behalf, and maybe they don't care, maybe they want all this behind them, but it's too much between these houses for me.
What the applicant has said, his intention is to do 6 units, so we could limit it to 6 units.
We can strike that and say maximum.
I'm good with that, as long as the applicant's good with that.
Yes, I'm perfectly fine with that. I mean, with the size of those lots, you know, trying to do a duplex, it's just not feasible, you know, with all the parking, the extra cars and all that stuff. So 6 units, 1 per lot, perfectly fine with me.
Works for me. There you go. Cut through that red tape.
I left it out a moment ago, but also this height. I like hearing no rooftop, but 2.5 stories. What are the neighbors? How tall are all the neighbors?
Most all of the neighbors are single story, but, you know, any R1 lot can be built to 2.5.
But not on this little bitty sliver tip. 35. The 6 units is better. Maybe some other folks will vote for it, but there was too many other things. The 2.5 stories was another problem.
But that's still standard R1. Again, is that 35 feet, 2.5 stories? But
currently, it's R1 currently.
Well,
How many
since we
buildings could
actually-
be there? 0? You couldn't put a house here right now, right? Even though it's R1, you could put 0 2.5 story houses here.
they're not big enough lots.
Right, okay, that's my problem. Because they're so close, 2.5 stories, you might normally let 2.5 stories, but not when it's this little bitty sliver right in somebody's backyard.
Since we have our developer with us, we have the luxury of asking him what he intends to build.
They are going to be, the houses that I built on Indian and Georgia are both 2-story houses. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you the actual height of those. You know, these will be 2-story. You know, they'll probably have a 6 or an 8 pitch roof on the top of that. So, you know, that's going to get you to, you know, 28, you know, to 30 feet, just kind of depending, you know, but it's going to be a 2-story house.
What about then, if I'm trying to be nice, I do want infill, I do want all that, maybe you convince me, then limit, it says 35 feet and 2.5 stories, changing that to 30 feet and 2 stories?
I'm fine with that.
I didn't think you'd convince me, but if you're so agreeable, then I didn't mean to just be negative, so yeah, thank you for all that, okay? Sold me.
Sold. Other questions, comments from commissioners? I think we're ready.
Well, then I'm going to move approval of item number 13, SPD 1547, check me, with additional TEs. Number 1, no dumpster. Number 2, no signs. Number 3 will line up to the access points on both Georgia and Indiana if possible, or as closely as possible, I'll say. Maximum number of units will be 6, and they will be no more than 30 feet tall and 2 stories.
Excellent.
Anything
Commissioner.
else? Did I miss anything?
There were 2 other things that we changed, just to remove the required landscape buffer on the north,
No.
and then also to change the language from dwelling units per square foot instead of dwelling units per acre. Those got
Okay.
changed in yesterday's MDS. so.
Okay. As long as the things I've got it, math, there's a reason I went to law school. But as long as it's no more than 6 units and the heights, that's what I'm interested in, so.
Yeah, is that language
Dwelling
confusing?
units per square foot per.
Yeah, I don't
acre.
think it matters
We'll leave
anymore.
that to staff.
Yeah, I don't know if that language matters anymore since we just set the maximum number of lots.
That's
So-
what I think too.
Okay. So the motion is to, Commissioner Powers has moved to recommend approval of SPUD 1547 to City Council, subject to the technical evaluation amendments that she read into the record and including Fallon's last addition. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner Govine. Please cast your votes. And the motion passes. Thank you. We're in line for item 14.
This is SPUD 1549, application to rezone 801 West Memorial Road from C3.
My name is Charles Allen with Allen Engineering. This is an existing building, used to be, I believe, a 7-Eleven gas station that's being converted to a business, a Bullfrog Oklahoma City Spas. The SPUD is to allow for a display pool, or technically a water feature. The pool is only, I believe, 1.5 feet deep. It does not go through the Oklahoma Department, Health Department for approval. And then also proposed would be a gazebo in the 25-foot setback. The pool, they did start construction. The pool forms are in place, and they are 10 feet from, the corner of it is 10 feet from the right-of-way of, I'm sorry, I forget the road, name of the road, Francis, I think. I'm sorry, Fairhill.
Okay.
There is one TE, I think, because this is an existing building, it may need to be reworded a little bit to being, if this site's redeveloped, since the building's existing, the parking lot's already been built under a different building permit for a remodel. Happy to answer any questions, and the owner's here if you have any questions.
Excellent. This is in my ward. Certainly seems like probably a much more enjoyable use than a gas station. And I am in full support. I don't have any questions. Other questions from commissioners?
I had a question just out of curiosity. Did you say it did or didn't have to go through the health department review of the pool?
It does not have
Does
to.
not.
It's not a bathing facility.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's only 1.5 feet.
Good for you.
So it doesn't, it's a water, it's like a fountain, so.
Yeah.
There won't be
They have
people
a
bathing in it or anything.
City County Health
No
Department.
sunbathers or anything.
Other questions, comments from commissioners?
You're agreeable to the technical evaluation?
Other than it says developed, it should be if the site were redeveloped, I believe. It's an existing building, existing parking lot. The pool forms are ready for concrete, other than pulling the weeds out now.
So just need to say when it's redeveloped.
So when redeveloped, okay. All right. Well, I will make a motion to recommend approval to City Council's SPUD 1549, amending technical evaluation to say when redeveloped, development of the parcel will be in compliance with Chapter 16 of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code 2020 as amended.
Commissioner Claire moves to recommend approval of SPUD 1549 to City Council, subject to the amended technical evaluation as read into the record. That motion's been seconded by Commissioner Powers. Please cast your votes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you. We're in line for item 15.
This is SPUD 1550, application to rezone 1105 Southeast 51st Street from R1.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Gunnar Joyce. I'm representative of the applicant Tyson Hilton, which is also the owner of the car lot to the east, I-35 Credit Auto. The purpose of this rezoning application is to extend that use. We've got a site plan that shows 7 parking spots and a office building that's just an eyelash over 1,000 square feet. As the staff report notes, this area has been transitioning to industrial uses in the last couple of years. So what we have proposed is a SPUD that really adopts I-1 base zoning, but the applicant, trying to be a good neighbor here, has added some additional restrictions. We've extended dumpster requirements from 25 feet in the base zoning to 50 feet. We've reduced some signage allowances, and we've struck out about 17 uses working with staff. So we believe this is a good, appropriate zoning, kind of walking the line of keeping the industrial use where we think this area is going based on, if you go to that overhead, that aerial currently, you can see Habitat for Humanity owns that complex to the north. And even though some of these look like residential structures around the area, they actually have some I-1 and I-2 zonings as well. But since there is a residential house directly to the west, we want to be cognizant of that. And so we've made some changes to the base zoning in the SPUD document. With that, happy to take any questions.
My word. I wouldn't say we're quite there yet on the uses, but close. Some of the fast food uses concern me. Retail sales and services, not so much, but really mainly the fast food and the eating establishments right there. You're really wanting to just expand the parking lot, and I know that, but I just don't want it to, be a free-for-all if that decide to sell off that lot, and they can do just about all this litany of things right here. And I would agree that the parking situation would probably be better if you did that, because it's kind of chaotic at the moment and has been for years. Those are my comments.
What uses are you wanting to have eliminated then?
Definitely the fast food, anything with a drive-through speaker.
I guess that is a separate use unit, but I agree
Unless
with you
we
that
can
fast
do
food,
it.
we wouldn't even want to bring, we wouldn't even want that.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with eliminating that.
Yeah,
Regardless of whether it has a speaker or not.
Right, okay. Yeah.
Commissioner, I apologize, oversight on our behalf. I thought I took that out when we did the drive-through window, so more than happy to take that one out as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So the TEB 2 strike 8,300, 35, 37, and 39.
I'll say this, and this is just for commission members, I don't have a solution. I am always really concerned. We are expanding these incompatible uses for an area that I agree with the applicant is clearly turning towards industrial. But that transition, we need to be respectful of the residents who are already there. And so, no offense to your client, but just from this overview map of the property, I can't imagine being a resident that lives next to that. And I understand it's a 15-foot setback, which is great. I'm wondering, is that sufficient? I'm wondering about the site-proof screening and the height of that screening. And I'm wondering what else we can do to try to buffer those neighbors. And I appreciate the efforts that have been made. I guess my question for commissioners is, what else are we prepared to do to make this a more suitable situation?
One of the issues always with car lots has to do with lighting.
Yes.
On the one hand, they have a real need for security, but on the other hand, any time you want to drive by 39th and May and go into those neighborhoods that surround the car lot there. You can read a newspaper at midnight, any, 3 blocks away, sitting in your car.
Yep.
It's just, lighting is a huge, huge, huge issue, so.
Lighting sounds like one thing we should,
And we have that standard boilerplate language about how it won't, yeah, well, it won't, it won't bleed over and all that kind of stuff, but it does. It's not sufficient, so. I think you can do that by either height of the standards, keeping them down low under the roof line of adjoining houses or whatever. It has to be something more than just what we require of everybody.
I think that'd be great. I'd love to hear from staff, any specific language, specific suggestions. The other question I have is about the screening. So it says it's consistent with the base zoning, so I think I'd like to see us go to an 8-foot fence certainly on the west for sure. And then it says a 5-foot landscape buffer. So I don't know, I'm looking at our resident landscape architect about other strategies that might help us mitigate challenges for those neighbors.
If I could add real quick.
Please.
They have actually already put in a fence. The existing house has been demolished, and so they put up that site-proofing fence. It is not the wood fence that has the slats in it. I think they have kind of a metal fencing that runs there, so there'd be no bleed over, no cracks for the lighting. On the landscape buffer, there is 5 foot, as you said. They were really disappointed actually when they got the civil engineer involved because they were hoping to achieve minimum double-digit parking here. When they've kind of laid it all out with 5 feet, they're only getting 7, and I know parking is kind of what has driven this. And so I think if we, certainly cognizant of what you're saying, and they've really tried to be a good neighbor here, but I know if they go any farther with that landscape buffer, I think they're gonna lose out on additional parking, which is kind of the whole goal.
How tall is this current screening? Because at this point, we are about what we can require of you. And I appreciate your client wanting to be a good neighbor, but it's still a matter of what we can require.
Is it even conforming if it's not site-proof?
Well, he's saying it is site-proof.
It is site-proof?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a requirement too, both in the SPUD base zone
And
as well.
6 foot high currently though, right?
Ideas on the lighting? Ideas on how we can combine that with the screening? Anybody got anything for me?
Put the lights on the fence.
Face them the other way,
Yeah, I know that recently we had a case where we talked about having full cutoff lighting so that the fixtures that prevent they're oriented in such a way that the lighting cannot go
Shielded.
above where it comes out. A lot of times the light it'll kind of bleed upward and into people's yards and so on. So we can require that type of lighting. We could require, I don't know if we discussed it last time, but if you put the lighting on the fence itself, it shines into,
yeah.
rather than from the building and outwards. So those are
I like that,
two ways
but
to
I
be a
don't know
little
how to
more-
word that. Do you have any advice on that?
Like full cutoff is kind of it's industry jargon, but it would work. I'm not sure of another way to.
You can also say no wall packs mounted on the building facades. Could we?
What about directional lighting that was, the lamp source was pointed away from the adjacent properties or not visible from the adjacent properties?
Yeah, that as
Not
well,
visible.
or that probably achieves the same thing.
And I think a maximum height on that lighting, if you can bring it down under the eaves, bring it down to 12, 13 feet, whatever that would be. Again, law school, no math, but, I think that would be really helpful.
Yep. Where are we, where are commissioners on screening, height, type, all of that? There's an existing 6-foot metal fence.
I think the lighting is the bigger of those two issues, and the difference between 6 and 8, in my view, isn't going to make a huge difference on light spill. It's more about the fixtures, but there is still a difference if you live in the house next door, maybe. I'm not saying they wouldn't still prefer 8 foot, so. I don't think it deals with the light spill issue, though.
I think at least on that western boundary where it's adjacent to the residential property, 8 foot would be definitely appropriate.
I think if we're giving in on a mere metal, it's not that more expensive to go to 8 foot.
I'd prefer 8 foot myself, too.
And I think the language needs to be explicit, although I guess it is in the base zoning that it's site-proof screening. So we don't need to require that part, but we do need to say it needs to get to 8 feet. Okay, were our thoughts on any of these discussions on lighting in particular?
Happy to do all the lighting, full cutoff and directional away from the residences. Happy to do that and add that in. On the fence, we have a picture, I guess I could pass it around on what's existing. We are taller than the habitat fence in the back. It looks like, it appears to be, that's probably only 6 feet. I'd imagine we are above that based on what I'm looking at. But again, I think the characteristics of the neighborhood are, they're really already abutting up to these types of uses. I know we're getting closer here, but their backyards are this situation already. So I think that.
So you're concerned about having to have your client build a new fence if it's, even though you think it's over 6 foot, you're afraid it's still under 8?
Right.
Is that where we are?
Correct.
Okay.
I don't want it to be 6.5 or 7 and they have to rip it out and put a new one in.
Thoughts, commissioners?
I'm unpersuaded.
Yeah. It sounds like that might be an issue you might have to take up with your city council person, because I think I'm inclined to agree with the other commissioners. Other thoughts?
Nope.
I think your comments are well taken. We have to
You gotta protect
very
the
best
neighbors,
job that
for
we
sure.
can to protect existing residential in these areas that are experiencing transition. I mean, yeah, you look at this from an aerial standpoint or even from a zoning standpoint, you can see that it's transitioning, but I don't think that means that we just abandon the people who live there and probably have for a while, so.
Agreed. Okay. Commissioner Privet, are you ready? We don't have anybody else sign up to speak. I don't know if we have any other comments.
Was the 8-foot fence the only thing we needed?
He is not agreeing. So I guess we need to go to council on this if there is a dispute. Oh, go ahead.
I don't know if this is any consideration or not, but drafting in specific tree types that would get higher than the existing fence, I think that might be something we'd be willing to consider in that landscape buffer.
In lieu of going all the way to 8 feet?
8 feet, right.
Thoughts?
I think my thought is I mean, they said they've got a 5-foot landscape buffer and they really can't increase it. You're gonna be hard pressed. I mean, you're gonna be able to plant trees in that buffer,
They're
but for
gonna
them to
destroy
be
the
able,
lot, yeah,
for them
the
to be able
concrete.
to thrive and mature, in the way that they're supposed to, that's probably not enough space.
I'll go to our council on
That's
if
a
there is
bamboo.
disagreement between the applicant and the commission as far as a TE. Are we
Could
still
we,
allowed to present the, oh, go ahead.
I apologize. Could we potentially postpone till the next one? We can go measure that fence, see if it's 8 feet and come back.
You can do that.
Yep. I'll make that motion.
It would also be great if you already had the language ready regarding the lights
Absolutely.
and the screening so that we could all just be on the same page. That'd be wonderful.
Could we go over that again real quick then? The other TEs that were gonna go on there were lighting, full cutoff and directed away from the residences.
Yes, sir.
We've got the discussion on the 8-foot fence, and we're gonna remove 3 of those uses that discuss fast food sit down.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. And our next meeting, August 24th?
Yep.
Okay, I'll make that motion to continue. What case are we on? SPUD 1550 to August 24th.
Commissioner Privet moves to continue SPUD 1550 to the August 24th meeting of the Planning Commission. Just waiting on a second.
Waiting on me first. I hit it. Nope, it's back.
Motion's been seconded by Commissioner Powers. Please cast your votes. What are we missing? There we go. Commissioner Govein's in. All right, and the motion passes. And I will say to the applicant, thank you, appreciate your patience. We're trying our best to protect the neighbors, but appreciate your patience with us. And
Definitely understand that too. Thank you all.
And you might want to reach out to Commissioner Privet too. I'm probably not one to fight over if it's a 7-foot fence and we'd love for them to be 8. I think we can probably manage through, but you know. Anyway, we're on to item 16. Yeah, the pictures would be helpful.
Item 16 is SPUD 1551, application to rezone 1233 Southeast 44th Street from R1, C3, and C4.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. This SPUD came about because my client had moved forward with a building permit and was told that his current operation that had been there for many decades wasn't allowed as is. So came to me, we tried to figure out a way to move forward. The only way we could find was through the SPUD. If you look at a broader aerial, you'll see that many of these sites have zoning that is frankly inconsistent with the use that's been on the ground for a long time. So what we've attempted to do is limit it to I-1 with a limited number of uses to allow the current use.
Except for the outdoor storage?
What's that?
Except for the outdoor storage? You're gonna move that inside?
No, I mean, so he owns, it's an appliance store.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can see even to the west.
Like a graveyard.
Tracks that aren't his. A lot of, I mean, this stretch of 44th has many uses like this. So there is one TE that we do agree to and be happy to answer any questions.
David, walk me through the history. I'm not understanding what you're talking about the non-conforming use. Can you just walk me through what happened? This
Yeah, so he owns an appliance store, has been there for many, many years. He went in for permitting for something that I don't know what it was. My belief is it was metal that he was wanting to put on a building. Plan review started looking at it and said, oh, well, not only can you not do metal, but the use you have isn't allowed. This is an older gentleman. He doesn't have email, didn't understand what was happening, other than he was told the use you've been doing for decades, you're not allowed to do. So we worked through him to try to figure out what was going on, and somehow part of this site is R1, part of it C3, none of which allows what he wants to do. So the only way to do it is either straight zoning, of course, or an SPUD. SPUD with limited uses was the path that we chose. So that's where we're at. Daryl's Appliance Store is the name of the operation. The outdoor storage is for the appliances, been there for a long time. Again, if you look to the west, you'll see a host of similar type of uses, that being outdoor storage. This is simply trying to get into conformance with what has been happening on site for quite some time.
But you're not asking for outdoor storage. You ask for that kind of in addition to the uses currently operating, right?
Yeah, so well.
Because we don't have a use for unit for outdoor storage. That's why I was like, hey, that'd be good, so it gets.
Yeah, I don't
inside.
actually, maybe we need to add that use unit.
No, we don't.
Well, I mean, I think we do. He's been operating in this manner for decades.
I know, and now it's our chance to clean it up.
Yeah, well, we'll have to say no to that.
All right, well, like I said, it looks like an appliance graveyard, and I don't want to make it worse.
My concern also is back to, and this is, I understand and I have a great appreciation for the outstanding work that our staff does, so I am not making these comments because of it's not a criticism of the people. I am concerned about the process and how effective the process is at serving our citizens. When I once again hear another story, the second meeting in a row, where we're talking about people being under a false impression about what their rights are, then those rights that they've been enjoying for years being taken away, or a period of time being taken away, and then when I ask why, the answers are these unclear explanations as to how we arrive at that conclusion. I feel like as a citizen board, we have an obligation to speak into bureaucratic challenges that our citizens face in accessing our services. So again, I'm concerned and would love for the opportunity for us to know what our avenue is as a commission to seek some type of explanation as to what's changing that's causing these kinds of cases to keep coming up. Just,
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I think, yeah, I do not know anything about the specific facts of this case.
okay.
But, you know, we have a code enforcement process that at its best and most efficient is operated on a complaint basis. There are people all over the city making illegal use of the property that they have. If it doesn't bother anybody, doesn't go reported, it can go on for decades.
Decades, yeah.
You know, I'm not sure non-conforming is quite the right terminology here. You're talking about a use that was never permitted on this site.
Well, yeah, it could be a long-standing illegal use, in which case it sure would be nice to just know that, you know, with clarity.
Whether, you know, the owner knows about it or the first owner knew about it, but it's been changed hands 10 times since then or whatever. You know, I tend to side with Commissioner Privet on items like this. This is our chance to clean this up. Again, I don't know anything about the facts of this case, but when I look at an application like this and you go through it and everything on it says, you know, the existing parking will be allowed to remain, the existing screening will be allowed to remain, existing landscaping will be allowed to remain, existing signage will be allowed to remain, existing sidewalks, you know, it's nothing is being done to improve this site in exchange for the ask here. And that concerns me, especially on a site which is, you know, clearly, dare I say it out loud, an eyesore. So I think I would have to see a little bit more in order to be persuaded that it needs to be rezoned.
Exactly the same.
So we're happy to move forward as it's drafted.
Okay.
As it's drafted.
It sounds like a motion to deny is imminent, because I don't
Yeah,
know
because
that.
I know what David's doing. Because I see the language before the uses.
Did you say you didn't know what the
In
reason
addition
for
to the uses currently operating, the following uses shall be the only uses permitted. In addition to, so, yeah.
So when I
It
talked to
wouldn't trigger the no outdoor storage and no, yeah.
And I talked to Sarah, she confirmed what happened was he went to permit an accessory structure.
That's what I was
and
asking.
Was told, you can't build this, you can't use metal, and oh, by the way,
And
even though you've been there 40 years, sorry, that's not allowed.
Well, and I assumed that new accessory structure was to clean up the outdoor storage and make it, you know, indoor storage, and
I mean, some of it.
I
but
was good with that. I mean,
He needs
that-
the
that's an
ability to
improvement.
have outdoor storage.
So it sounds, so where we are as a commission is we're saying we're fine with it as long as we get rid of that use.
That use unit's not in
Outdoor
there.
storage. Well,
It's
no,
not-
because it says
but-
in addition to current uses, right? So this language is sufficient to encompass
Yeah,
the
it's
existing operation, correct?
Right.
It would legalize the
I think that is
existing.
correct, but I think it is a little, it's not clear to me that that anybody knows what that is being operated on the premises. I mean, if you were given notice in this PUD and you went to look at a neighbor did, they may not know what currently operating is.
We look at this in 10 years, we're not going to know on August 10th, 2023, what the current use was exactly. So it would be better to clarify.
I think that should be
here.
added.
If there are any use units that aren't in here that they need to add.
I don't
that are
want to add
on-site.
outdoor storage, that's my deal. And that's the only thing that David.
Okay, so
doesn't
based on,
want.
I mean, so with staff's review of this proposal, I don't know, Sarah, Jeff, I don't know who's in the best position to respond to this. With the uses that are currently happening, which clearly, based on the photos, it would have to be outdoor storage. Like, what was contemplated with the staff report? Like, what was the intention here? Was it to say that that is allowed? because I think that that is critical to understanding the commission's next step.
Okay, so Sarah Welch, Planning Department. Our understanding of what happened in this situation is this applicant purchased a accessory structure. I believe it was delivered, not permitted. He paid for it, and then he wasn't able to get it because the material was metal. And so the spud is, our observations were that the spud was intended to keep the existing use going, and that was what the spud was submitted for. To allow the non-accessory structure to be metal, which would be allowed with the I-1 base zone. And then really the only question or concern we had was about the caretaker on site. That was the only part that we noted in our staff report that we just needed more information about.
So based on what Sarah is saying, we would need, if we were moving forward with this, we would have to actually remove explicitly that use unit for outdoor storage. Because what Sarah is saying, unless Sarah stop me if I'm misinterpreting what staff is presenting to us with the report, but it sounds to me like you're saying the existing uses are allowed. Clearly outdoor storage is an existing use, therefore it's incorporated into this application. So the only way to get past having that use is for us to explicitly say, we're not going to allow that use. Does that statement make sense to the commission?
Yeah, so I agree.
Still makes it still makes it
either need to
illegal
say-
and non-conforming.
We need to put outdoor storage in there if you want to allow it. If you don't, exclude it explicitly.
Explicitly.
Yep, okay.
Again, I'd argue from a process standpoint, we'd have to include it only if we were, if our intention was to exclude that use, we need to say that.
I think it's.
I'm not willing to agree to have it excluded. I'll take a denial and
You'll
move
take a
on.
denial and go to council? All right, I'll move.
So
That's the way
even
it's
in
gotta be.
keeping with that possible process, I think we need to do something to make it clear that it is the outdoor storage aspect of this application that we are opposed to, so that it doesn't somehow slip through city council as, oh, well, it's already there, da, da, da. That they understand that this is the issue. This is what we're denying.
Suggestions?
Approve it with the TE.
I don't think we're allowed, then we're in a dispute about whether or not we can allow a TE that the applicant has not agreed to.
Can we have TEs on denials? That'd be a first.
Right.
Or
Well,
we can
if
just
you
make it part of the motion. You
Well,
know?
I'm not willing to agree to it. If you remember last time when Commissioner LaForge asked for the 8-foot masonry wall, I said no, and you guys moved
Recommend
to
denial.
recommend denial. That's
So
the
what are our
process.
methods to achieve the outcome that Commissioner Powers just named?
We just make it part of the record, I think is the only thing we can do.
Because the applicant does have the applicant is entitled to be the driver of the application, right? And it may mean that we don't win, but we're entitled to be the driver of the application. My
And
client paid a bunch of
we're
money to be here.
entitled
The application is for.
We're
What's that?
entitled to advise
Very
council.
clear what the application is for.
Oh, it's intended to allow outdoor storage,
My,
as has been.
And
for
our job
decades.
is to advise council, so.
But I
that's
want to
what
bring
we're
us
gonna do.
back, commissioners, to what the critical issue is. At this point, it sounds like there is a dispute about, we would not like for the outdoor storage use to be included. If we make the motion to deny, Commissioner Powers' point is, how do we make clear in our recommendation that our objection is not to this change, it's really that we want to end the outdoor storage? And so I'm wondering, from our staff, what vehicles we have to execute that point, and that was what.
Beyond my motion, I don't think there's anything else more we can
I'll
do.
make sure and tell council.
Well, let's ask staff.
Staff, I mean, can someone give me an answer?
If you make a recommendation of denial, I would advise that you include a finding that the reason for the denial is based on the outdoor storage. That will be communicated on the memo to city council.
Okay.
That sounds perfect.
That's what I was
And
gonna do.
David's word.
Yeah.
We'll call the councilman as soon as we leave and give him a blow.
And you're going to say that part, right?
That's as good as.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
All right, I'll make a motion to deny said application SPUD 1551 for the explicit reason of there being an existing outdoor storage use, and it's non-conforming, and we do not want to make it conforming.
Commissioner Privet has moved to recommend denial of SPUD 1551 to City Council with a finding that our objections are to the current non-conforming outdoor storage use. Remember, commissioners, as you are, oh wait, I think we need a second.
Second.
So the motion has been seconded by Commissioner Powers. Commissioners, please remember as you are casting your votes, a vote yes is to recommend that the application be denied by the City Council. So it's a weird say yes to say no situation. And the motion passes. Thank you. Gotta love these.
Be boring if there wasn't some, element of.
Yeah,
I just want to know
and
why.
I apologize, David, for not seeing that. Or, well, I saw it and I just made an assumption.
You do with all those appliances.
We were cleaning up that with the new building, and I was all for that, but
No, that'd be great.
a little different.
Okay, I think we're ready for item 17.
This is SPUD 1552, application to rezone 1612 North Virginia Avenue from R1.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here today on behalf of the applicant. The application before you would allow for 3 residential dwelling units. This is in the core of the city. It's an urban medium, LUDA, so the density is certainly in line with that. There are 3 TEs, all of which we agree to. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Govine, this is in your ward.
Sure. I'm in support of the application. I suspect there may be some questions from others, perhaps, but yeah, I feel that it's appropriate infill development for this part of the city. We've seen a number of others of similar nature, and be happy to hear from any other commissioners that want to discuss.
David, could you clarify the orientation of these buildings? They're going to be facing an alley. The alley is to the north?
Correct.
Is that what's happening?
Alleys to the north. Now, TE1 does say that the front home along Virginia shall be oriented towards that street, so it will allow for that front one to be oriented towards Virginia. In terms of TE2, the minimum lot size will be 1,700 square feet, and then TE3, what we have is from the north, it's a 14-foot setback. From the east, if these are individual lots, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, one starting at Virginia. The eastern setback would be 0 for lots 1 and 2, 3 foot for that easternmost lot, 3 foot setback on the south, and on the west, it's a 16-foot setback from Virginia.
Even when you change the orientation of that building to face, so I guess that's what's confusing me. You're not moving, it's still going to be configured on the site exactly like this.
It'll just be oriented design-wise facing
To
Virginia.
face the, gotcha, okay.
Sarah, is that
As
sufficient
wide
for
as
the
it
8th
is
floor?
long, it seems like it'd be,
Efficient for what?
wash it up.
Is it sufficient for the 8th floor, that
probably dress it
building
up.
oriented? Is it sufficient for whoever's going to be reviewing this, I guess, that language?
It's not my language.
I mean,
Oh,
they're asking if we think that the 8th floor will interpret oriented toward.
If I could tell you what the 8th floor thought.
Well, that's what I had inquired about, because that we see that on other applications, so clearly they have a process for that interpretation.
Or you could say.
Yeah, that's not a new-
Appear or appear to face or appear to face. We've used that before.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. If they've seen that before and they know what that means, then I'm good.
But I wouldn't mind if Mr. Box would please read back those setbacks again so we can capture them correctly.
3, 3, and
So 14 feet from the north,
16. Thought it was 16.
16 feet from Virginia.
Ah, okay. Oh, yeah,
3
I see
foot
it.
on the south.
Barely.
On the east, it's 3 feet from the easternmost structure.
See that one.
The interiors would be
For
0.
the first two
Yes, sir.
lots. Okay.
Okay.
Doesn't work. There we go. Yeah, so on the far east, it would be 3 feet, and then, you know, if these are interior lots, it'd be 0 on the interior lot to the east, 0 to the east, 6 foot between.
Okay. Questions, commissioners? Thoughts?
I still don't get how the first house is gonna face Virginia, unless it's just,
It already does.
It's just going to look visually,
it?
it's going to appear as if it is facing Virginia, but the actual like orientation of the layout is not going to change. It's just going to appear as.
So
okay,
the front
building's not
door.
turning.
Yeah, right, the front door.
Right, I got it.
Well, I guess right now, the front door, that still does face Virginia, so does it require any change? Are we even saying anything meaningful at all?
Not really.
Oh,
Well, subject to their interpretation, which we see oftentimes,
Is
I
not,
guess, is, you know, have to look at some precedents of past cases to know what that actually imposes on the developer, I think. But for me, that wasn't a reason to
say
not
no.
support it, but I'm only speaking for myself.
staff comment on that?
No, my comment was going to be, if the commission wants to, be more specific on like what that means in terms of architecture, roof form, or something like that, that would make it address the street, we can certainly do that, but as was pointed out, even though the front door is actually recessed and not really all that visible, there are some things that could be done to improve the architecture to address the street if the commission desires, but it has windows on both stories that do look out on the street.
See, but that,
The commission could say, it could do some things to, you could, well, I'm just speculating, so I'll stop. But
well, we'll take your speculation unless you
Well,
have
I
specific
don't know that,
suggestions.
we've agreed to the TE. I don't know that the planning commission wants to morph into the downtown design review and start becoming a, architectural design committee.
I was trying to resist that, but I'm happy to play architect and make suggestions.
You
but-
do
but
you do that professionally.
Yeah.
I think the concern,
Don't
though,
disagree
David,
with you.
is the visual for the neighborhood. Like, my concern is that when you're walking down Virginia, the visual that is desired is for people to see homes that are facing onto the street. So when it looks like you're looking at the side of a house, it's about the aesthetic that we're creating for this neighborhood.
Yeah,
And that's
totally
my
agree.
concern.
So what if we agree to TE and we'll go work with staff? I believe that is their concern, is
That
that
is.
the outward appearance be fronting Virginia, so it looks like a home and not the side facing us.
Right.
If we work through language sufficient so that at 8th floor, it ensures that their concern is met, rather than sitting here for an hour.
From
Right, trying to figure that out. I agree.
From experience, I believe that their concern would be that the address is posted on that side, making it the front, that they wouldn't get into requiring a gable or a porch cover, or they wouldn't even get into requiring that.
I mean, I had that cross my mind of, do you require a gable in to face the street? Is that, or are we playing design, is that a design review comment?
I agree with David.
It's a
I don't
valid
believe
point.
it's our job, but I just wanted to go on record saying that I don't believe that they would, 8th floor would either.
So I'll say this about that. The idea of there being a front-facing, at least door and presentation, that eyes on the street, it's very much part of the, I can never remember the name of this program. I always say it backwards. Safer Streets, Better Cities, is that it?
Better streets, safer cities.
So, I mean, I think that I'm not so much about other things with respect to design, but that presentation of, eyes on the street and orientation toward the street, it is very much part of what we do.
Well,
I'll tell you one thing,
Also, while I agree with that, I think we have matters, in fact, coming up in the future, that the doors don't face the front street. So we approve that all the time and might in the very near future. Doors don't always face the front street. So I don't know about telling people where they have to face their door.
That's what I was saying. I don't believe.
But it depends on the character of that street.
What about
Yeah,
this
the
suggestion?
street,
We can limit where the fence can go. So if they're not allowed to fence, if the fence can only be located to the end of the garage,
Or
for
a max of
example.
4
You have
foot
some
probably
frontage that
allowed,
faces
is
Virginia
what
that
we
way,
allow.
is a thought, anyway.
With this orientation, I believe only a 4-foot fence would be allowed by code, but
I think I'm in agreement with David's suggestion of if we feel like we've got the language, we're making that request, let staff work it out with them. But I do think that it would be a good idea for us to have clear language into the future about how we can execute that goal. I think in other cases, we've had language that allowed for that. I guess I just can't remember what we've said before. So do we feel like that's a sufficient response that gets at the purpose of that we have in mind? Okay. Do we want to read the TEs one more time? Just to be clear?
Well, so we agree with all three. TE2, the minimum lot size is 1,700 square feet. TE3, the setback from the north is 14 feet. From the east, it is 3 feet. The south is 3 feet, and the west is 16 feet. And you got the individual.
Then we're looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend approval of SPUD 1552.
Commissioner Govine moves to recommend approval of SPUD 1552, subject to the amended technical evaluations as read into the record. That's good. That motion has been seconded by Commissioner Powers. Please cast your votes. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Earning that money today here. We're now in line for item 18.
18 is PUD 1963, application to rezone 11503 Southwest 29th Street from AA.
Charles Allen, Allen Engineering. This is a multi-use project for Salazar Homes. We've got about 20 acres on the north of Tract 1, 9.4 acres for Tract 2, which would be base zoning of C3 commercial. The residential is R2 for duplexes, have about 83 lots with, so that'd be 166 units on the 20 acres. There are 3 TEs. We agree with 1 and 2. We'd like to probably discuss number 3, some of the uses. I've got a little handout to pass out, might be helpful. We would like to keep the 4 uses that are listed in TE3, plus add 8300.31 construction sales and service. I don't know if y'all are familiar with Ramjack on Highway 152 out towards Mustang. That use was used for their building permit. You'll see that numbers on that cover sheet. And I've got a couple pictures of the Ramjack facility, which I think is a very nice facility. That's also in Ward 3, Jeremy Meeks' ward. We'd also like to add 8350.3 custom manufacturing. This is on that last page. You'll see an example of Salazar's 9100 Northwest Expressway. That is more of an industrial use, and I think we would, in this location, obviously the roof line would be more consistent with the Ramjack that I've provided a picture of. And the last one would be industrial light 8350.8. Happy to answer any questions or
I think I have a few, but
I would assume staff would have been trying to restrict Tract 1 and not Tract 2.
Right.
But I only see objections to some of the uses in Tract 2.
I'll let Commissioner
agreed
Meek, do you want to start us off before we go into
sorry.
questions?
Yeah, I got this from Mr. Allen ahead of time this morning and looked up, dug into the TE number 3 that he wasn't happy with. I think, Commissioners, I think the building maintenance the medical services general with the Integris medical use next door, I don't, even with the repair services consumer, I don't see a problem with those three. I believe that the wholesale storage and distribution restricted, not sure that's a good fit there, especially with the residential. I'm open to any other comments from any other commissioners.
I guess my question is, for the uses that you're asking to be added, are any of these uses outdoor uses? Are all of these limited to indoor? Limit all of these activities to indoor?
All indoor.
All indoor.
Okay.
And
Staff?
I do want to add that we will be coming back on the commercial track with site-specific plans for you to see. So this isn't the last time that you're going to see this, so you will have more input.
That's helpful.
My question is for staff. This is the first time I've seen this unit. Family daycare homes. Use unit explanation, please.
Which one?
Is that allowed in the
That's
residential
one of-
track?
That's in the residential.
Track one, yeah, residential. It was my main concern in that group, being adjacent to residential. I mean, is that a full-blown daycare, or, are they homes that are just allowed to act as businesses, or?
Sarah Welch, Planning Department. No, it's a permitted use in the R1 district right now, so it's not a child care center. It is like an in-home daycare.
Right, okay, so it's already in
But
R1.
It's already allowed
But
in
it's already
R1. It's a
allowed in
permitted
R1.
use in R1.
Okay, all right.
Would staff like to respond to the deletion of TE3 and the concerns regarding those use units that were requested for removal?
I think that Commissioner Meek's assessment was good. What we did when we looked at it is we said, you're putting residential to the north of you, you already have residential to your west, and then we looked at the SPUDs that were recently approved to the east, and we just kind of compared those. So we thought this was intensifying the use even beyond what was recently approved on the east side. So that's where the recommendation for those kind of light industrial warehousing uses came from, to be removed.
What were the restrictions we put? Because to me, just listening to Mr. Allen trying to advocate for his client here, if the uses are going to be indoors and we are going to, and the operation is far enough away from the residences, and we have sufficient facade regulations, I'm wondering what other things we need to address.
Well, I think you are covered for your architectural because you're in C3, so a lot of times folks who want industrial want the metal buildings that are allowed in I1. C3 wouldn't allow that. I think our general concern about any distribution warehousing use is the orientation of garage door bays and truck deliveries and that type of thing. And then in this particular case, the access to to the residential lot, the primary access will be through this development.
Yep.
So that was just where we were coming from.
So then it sounds like if specific plan is required, we need some stronger language about what specifically we will review at specific plan. And it sounds like it needs to be the orientation of the buildings, the building facades, the traffic flow, all of that needs to be included in what we're going to review at specific plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to add the uses that to be added that you were requesting, I don't have an issue with those three, especially with all indoor use.
Sorry, one more thing, Sarah Welch. You would not have to specify specific things that you want to see in a specific plan unless it's over and beyond what the code requires, which is pretty intense. They have to provide a landscape plan and renderings and a summary of how they conform to the PUD.
I have been burned too many times to agree with that, Sarah, but I
Okay.
appreciate you
Okay.
saying that. I know you're technically right. And
we're agreeable with that.
okay.
So I also very strongly agree with that statement. And I think that by limiting ourselves, by saying what we will review at this point, I think we are setting a bad precedent. Anything that we can review today, we can review at specific plan stage. And if we want to say that, that's great. I don't think we need to itemize the things that we will review at specific plan stage.
I appreciate that point. You especially, Janice, have been here when we have had more cantankerous counsel than Mr. Allen. And the argument is always, we're operating outside the scope of specific plans. So I don't know if council can give us an answer on that, because I feel like I'm in agreement for that with this, in this case, because I think we can manage our way through. But let this property be sold, we're gonna be having a whole different other argument if there is different counsel representing this case to us when it comes back in specific plan. And so what I'm saying is I'd rather us be armed with the most tools we need in order to move forward rather than being stuck at the end, if that whole thing makes any sense.
So the question is, what is that armor? Is the armor to specify, or is that armor to say, anything we can review today, we'll review at specific
And
plan?
I'd love to know if there's clarity as far as the ordinances around specific plan about that.
And is there actually any teeth in that?
Yeah, I'd like to know.
Unfortunately, I don't have the specific plan ordinance in front of me. I don't know if Sarah has that, but basically, normally it's like whatever is in the SPUD itself, and then at the specific plan stage, like if it says your building materials are this, this, and this, then you're just like looking to see that their building materials do meet that.
Which is not the same as what you're saying.
No,
So that's what we would need clarified.
I don't know if Sarah can pull that. I don't have a copy of the ordinance.
I do have it. What would you like exactly to know?
what does it say?
Can they
Specific plan
But it's
are
requires.
they able
long.
to
Specific
review
plan.
uses at the specific plan?
That's where we need one of those projectors, old school, and you just throw it up there and everybody could read.
I can look it up on my
Okay,
phone.
I'm going to be brief, but no, you cannot amend uses at Mr. Allen's question
Yeah, I
was,
didn't
can they
think so.
amend uses? That is
No.
not something
No.
that you can do. You need a summary showing how the specific plan conforms to the design statement and is Exhibit B. You need to include preliminary elevations for all structures, indicating building heights, materials, colors, and the general appearance of proposed structures. You need a parking and loading plan, a preliminary landscape plan, fencing, trash disposal, and related storage areas, and a sign program and sign design and dimensions. And then if he's not in a design district, so that's,
Different.
yeah.
So would access, which is going to be an issue here, fall under that parking and whatever the other?
The parking and loading plan, I think, I'm going to ask him directly, would you be platting that street that serves the residential
Yes,
and
platting.
the individual
All
lots?
properties required to be platted.
Yeah, so that would, I'm not sure if that's, which one's the chicken and the egg, but they
you
would.
will-
Residential portion will be platted.
And the commercial.
Separate, both of them.
So you're looking at 8 lots in the commercial right now. That could end up being one larger lot. I mean, we have no tenants at this point. So when we come back to you with specific plans, we are going to have a tenant. You're probably going to also, I don't know if you said sign regulations, you'll be able to address the sign regulations, the architecture, the site plan, landscape plan. Basically, you're going to see a pre-building set of plans,
Yeah.
building permit
I
set.
think Staff telling us they don't want to cost.
So as long as it says that, I'm good.
I'm good with it for this instance. I'm making myself a note right now that I really think we need.
We're simply trying to avoid coming back at a later date with a PUD on a little 1-acre tract in the bigger unit here. So
And
this
I
would
fear that if we take this action, we're positioning you to be forced to do that. And I'm also afraid that we won't be acting within our authority when we reject your specific plan if we don't like it. And that is still my worry, is that there's not enough teeth. But if we feel like there's sufficient language at this current moment, then I'm fine with that, with moving forward. But I do think we need to have some more thorough conversations with council about that.
Here, here.
Yep.
So it sounds like there's no further action needed except a motion. And it also sounds like there's consensus among the commission. Go ahead.
Before we move on, we've been talking about kind of the commercial part of this. Back to the issue of front doors. One of the things that I noted in the review of the residential portion of this is that the elevations you provide don't have front doors that face the street. This thing you just handed out with the ramjack thing, that's a little different, but the elevations that are attached to the staff report, yeah, they don't show a front-facing door. And I will just say, you know, this seems like maybe a bigger deal, or sounds like I'm making a bigger deal. There are duplexes out in Surrey Hills that were built out there, and they don't have doors that face the street. In fact, they don't have any doors. All there are these garage doors, and you have to go around to the side. They don't have any kind of porch. They don't have anything. There's just a door that you would normally think, oh, that's the garage door, but no, it's the front door. They are so incredibly ugly, unwelcoming, they just look institutional. There's nothing about them that would suggest you're in a neighborhood in an area that's, you know, built around a golf course and is all treed and pretty and all that kind of stuff. And then these just blank walls. So I really, really think we need a commitment about that.
You know, with the floor plan you're looking at, we can easily face the doors towards the road. So I don't, if you want to add that as a TE, I don't think that's a problem.
I think we should.
I'm good with that.
So the front doors
Do you
can
want
actually move
to
forward.
provide Commissioner Meek, Commissioner Powers, with some specific language about that as we're getting ready for this motion? Are we good on
We're
uses?
loading you up here, aren't we? Sorry.
Are we good on uses, commissioners? We're good with eliminating TE3? No one has any objections?
And adding uses?
No? You're good? I'm good. Okay. I don't think we have any remaining issues in dispute.
I'm a little concerned.
Go ahead, Commissioner Privet.
You know, the wholesaling storage use is probably my biggest one. Just, I could see, you know, and I don't think it's gonna happen, but, you know, like a big Costco store just going up right there. I mean,
I understood the conversation.
as one big lot, you know. With 4 smaller buildings, I'm not near as,
Because there's been references to 3 uses and 4, there's 4 uses listed here. I thought 3 of them were okay. One of the wholesaling, storage, and distribution was not, I understood. And so I was about to mention that, because just for clarity's sake, are we approving all 4 or just the 3?
That's the question.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I was okay with deleting TE3 except for that's the one that I didn't want to think we should let go.
all right, we can do that. We can amend that.
So TE3 would become just the wholesaling,
Just
storage,
selling
and distribution.
Strike it. Are you,
Good with that?
Charles, are you okay with that?
The wholesale storage and distribution?
That would be we would disallow that use unit, 8350.16.
Well, that's, I don't know if y'all are familiar with 8,000 Northside Drive, Northside Business Park at Rockwell and Wilshire. Swadley's is back in there. It's a business park. It's an industrial building. Salazar's built one building back there. They have another one that's about ready to start, but one of the buildings is for a gymnasium now, and it fell under that specific use of 8350.16. So the problem we run into is that when we get to the building permit side, they look at the uses. Well, they don't always use a use number. Sometimes if you go back and look at permitting, you'll see warehouse, you'll see office building. You don't see the actual specific numbers. So there's not a lot of
I concur with that.
cross-referencing
Yes.
between what's in the PUD and what's actually permitted. So I'm playing devil's advocate today, but I'm not going to tell you that a year or 2 years from now, we could fill out our building permit application and just put warehouse, or we could put office building on it and put a garage door and start doing warehouse. I mean, that's the nature of the game these days. We're trying to be proactive and get ahead of that. Or we're also trying, I mean, if as a city, if it does start to tighten up the cross-communication between departments, and that were to be caught, then we would be coming back and submitting a SPUD. So
Well, that sounds
I'm
like a
agreeable.
definite.
To be honest, I'm agreeable either way. I mean, you're going to cost more money and a little bit of time, but it's probably the right thing to do from a city standpoint.
Is there a way to limit the commercial tract to, I mean, you have to have the road down the center to enter the residential portion, which in my opinion, a big Costco couldn't happen then.
Right, and then we could
So
have two tracks
you're
and
talking
not one
about
big
two
one.
tracks and not one big one. Could that link, because I think that's the fear with the wholesale storage and distribution, that you get this gigantic box.
I'm fine with taking that out.
Really couldn't do that.
I'm fine with taking
If we
that
write it in that it has a minimum of 2 lots. Or
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a minimum of 2 lots is fine, but I'm also, I'm not here to fight you guys. Like I said, we can come back with a SPUD or whatever needs to happen. And this is a lot of crystal ball looking ahead right now. But
Right.
this is the best look ahead we have today.
That works for me. I think that,
Which part works for you, the
that
2
making
lots?
it 2 lots, yeah, I mean, minimum.
That would help me feel comfortable in deleting TE3 altogether, is what I'm saying.
Perfect.
Okay. Thoughts on that, commissioners? You're good with it? Okay. Think there's consensus. Think we're ready for a motion.
Okay, bear with me. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to recommend approval of PUD 1963 with TEs as listed in number 1 and number 2, and TE3 being changed to read that there will be a minimum of 2 lots in the commercial portion.
That too, yeah.
And number 4.
Pardon me? Oh, I
Specific
didn't see
to
it.
you.
Okay, and then number 4, that all residential structures shall have front-facing doors that address the street.
Can you go ahead and, just for the sake of clarity, we'd be eliminating TE3, you'd be adding another TE requiring that that track 2 have a minimum of 2 lots, and then what is the next?
I was just going to switch TE3 language. Keep TE3, yeah, delete
TE3.
Delete TE3, adding TE3 back to read 2 lots.
Okay, we're minimum of 2 lots. I'm just trying to make sure the record is abundantly clear when
Right.
staff has to go back and clarify this.
And then
So it's going to be
TE
track 2 is going to have 2 lots minimum.
Yes.
Then what's the next thing?
TE4 would be that all residential structures shall have front-facing doors that address the street.
Gotcha. Okay, so Commissioner Meek moves to recommend approval of PUD 1963 to City Council, subject to the amended technical evaluations as read into the record. That motion is seconded by Commissioner Privet. Please cast your votes.
I'm here before 4 today.
Told you we got it.
The motion passes. Thank you. Hey, it's not even 4 o'clock. We're doing pretty good. We have reached the end of our items requiring separate vote. There are no additional items, communications and reports. Any reports of Planning Commission committees? None. Commission members, Commissioner Clare? Nothing from me. Commissioner Powers?
I attended a meeting yesterday afternoon, was it? With staff regarding the code update. It was just called by Councilman Cooper. He invited a number of smaller developers, tend to develop infill development. And so that was really sort of the focus of what we were there to discuss, the urban medium and how that's going to work. I because I didn't set up the meeting. In fact, I thought I was going to City Hall to meet with Councilman Cooper, but when I got there, it was a big meeting. So, my bad for not inquiring further. But it was very interesting. It generated quite a lot of discussion. It was very informative, both in terms of, what we're really sure about and what we're not really sure about. And I think that if you had been there especially, and you had been there especially, it would have been really, really, really helpful. So my recommendation to Councilman Cooper is going to be that, the core, at least, since that's what most urban medium is, it's 2, 7, and 6, that we kind of broaden our inclusion a little bit, because I would have been very interested to have your inputs in the discussion. I'm sure we'll have more of them as we go forward, and just thought I would bring it up. How the code update is going to affect the city at large was, among the things that were being discussed. And as we go forward with that, we're all going to have to kind of dig in a little bit on it, I think, so.
Can I ask, I guess, of staff, what's our current timeline for the code update? And for passage of the code, what is the scope of our review as the Planning Commission?
You guys get to review every word. So the Planning Commission, I'll start with where we are. So the sign code was the first thing out of the gate.
The sign code's done?
The sign code is now going to be going back to council soon. So council and legal, that's been worked through.
That sounds fun.
It's largely a legal issue. So we hope to get that done this fall. The urban medium that Janice mentioned has been drafted. The stakeholder advisory team is currently reviewing it. And so what will be coming from the consultant this fall. So we have the base code drafted, and it's being refined as we get comments from like the group yesterday and the stakeholder advisory team, planning commission members who were on that team. But what we still don't have and what we're waiting on is the compatibility section. So a lot of the things that we talk about day in and day out here, like what kind of buffer do we need? What changes if you change a use here? What needs to, what height differences? All those things that we want to make, kind of take the existing code to the next level on. That needs to come soon, and then also the uses. There's been a lot of work on the uses and the use development standards over this summer. So that's in draft form, and it's getting close to the point where we can then present that to the stakeholder advisory team as well. Subdivision regulations will be coming, I believe that's early next year. Building design standards. So this was a good example today. So we had the discussion about how does this, what does orienting to the street mean? And so the code will have a section that will deal with that, so that we don't have to, the Planning Commission doesn't need to feel like they have to be a design review board. But with infill, design becomes more and more important, because we're trying to put more density in and make it more palatable to the neighbors, higher density more palatable. So that necessarily means design. So questions like that will be in the code in that section, and that's something that Dover Cole, one of our sub-consultants, is working on. Again, we hope to get all of this fall, late this year, and put a package together. Now it's a little difficult to review the code because you see the base code and you see these standards, but you don't quite know exactly how it's all going to fit together, because you don't know what the compatibility standards say. You don't know what the building design standards say. So we've got a good chunk of it ready to go. Once we have the urban medium code drafted, then it'll be the other areas like the urban low, the suburban areas, the rural areas will follow a similar process, and they'll be similar in structure, so they'll be easier to do, because we'll just be able to say, hey, everybody, this is similar to UM, it's just here are the key differences. So important differences, obviously, because of the quite different character, but the way the code reads and the way it's structured will be similar. So I think that's kind of where we are right now. Any questions?
I mean, I feel a lot better knowing we're going to get to see it and approve it, so I guess I don't really have any questions.
Yes, and the Development Review Committee, there are 3 members of this commission that are on that, will have the first crack at it, and they'll be the ones that will be reviewing kind of in depth before it comes to you all as a group. So you don't just get to grill staff, you get to grill your fellow commissioners who are on that committee and say, what do you think about this? And what were you thinking when you set this number and things like that?
It's cool. Thank you, Jeff. Anything else, Commissioner Powers? Commissioner Meek? Commissioner Privet?
I'm good.
Commissioner Newman?
No.
Commissioner Govine?
Seeing as we finished on a good time, I'll try to take up some more of everyone's time. But no, I wanted to make one point going back to, and this is getting into building design standards. We do need to think about the wording on this, building orientation, and I've seen it said a few different ways, but I just wanted to point out that as an architect, like when we go to permit with the city, we're going to point it, if they start pushing back saying, no, your door doesn't face the street, I'd be looking at the application saying, hold on a minute, it doesn't say door. And in this case it did, we just said door specifically in one, but a lot of times it's the front of the home shall be oriented to the street. That can be interpreted differently. I've also seen the front of the home shall be or appear to be oriented to the street. That could be interpreted even slightly different, maybe a little more flexibility there. And so in the case that Commissioner Powers just raised, that one I think was appropriate to say door specifically, because you get these garages and that's it. And I completely agree with your point on that is not attractive or desirable development. It doesn't encourage good neighborly behavior. It doesn't make a good neighborhood, and we should
And
push back against
we're only seeing one picture of that when they're just
Yeah.
a wall of garage doors. It's a big
exactly
deal.
for blocks, and it's not good. So I think we should really think about the terminology we're using and how we apply those. And then on the code update, I had the point I was going to make is I haven't been involved in the one round of reviews so far. I had not actually approached it from the standpoint of why don't we make it more dense? So I was commenting on what I saw as if, let's just review what's here. It all makes sense. Can I follow it? Do I understand it? If I was trying to do a project with this code, would I be able to get through it? But I hadn't even really, it did not occur to me in that round to say, actually, can we go higher? Can we go smaller lots? And that's just more of a personal opinion that, I want to encourage density, encourage development in the core, and I want to discourage sprawl and suburban developments that aren't fitting into the comprehensive plan. I don't want to, obviously we're going to build homes and stuff, but I think making it harder to do some of the things that get done a lot is a good thing.
And that's largely what I think the consensus that we heard. I mean, of course, the group that we met with was urban medium developers, but they're all about, hey, how can we increase the amount of density? And we will bring to the commission, one of the issues that they brought up, or the questions they had was like, well, how many units will this result in? How much more density can we put in under this code? And when we present it to the commission, we'll be able to have some of those numbers, some assumptions, because it would allow substantially more density. I think there were folks in there that wanted more, wanted to be able to do kind of infill projects just kind of wherever. And so but that is the big question, because we hear the exact opposite from other people, as you might imagine. So we're going to come to you with something that we feel is balanced, and then it's going to be up to you and the city council to decide, well, where do we go from there?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's an exciting process.
I would agree with your first statement on the facades, but I think we kind of have to balance that with making sure that the facades address the street, but also at the same time not restricting them so much that we restrict creativity and the opportunity for design. I think it's a really tough thing as an architect also.
Yeah, I want to try to avoid telling people which way their door has to face, because you can do a good development either way and still have a building that faces the street that's oriented towards the street in many cases. I'm not sure about the Salazar product.
Commissioner Noble, unless you had anything else, Commissioner Govine.
Any more density? No. Again, and you know, representing Ward 8, we obviously have and want less density, and sometimes we go and we have lunch learns and we say, as we're further from the core, maybe we shouldn't have such small lots, and then we come in here and we approve 30-foot lots. So it kind of trying to balance that act sometimes is difficult.
Because I think we've got to understand what the development community intends to do. Because, I mean, for me, with Ward 8, it's always going to be an attractive place for people to live. And so they're gonna wanna try to fit in as many people as they can into these places where people flock to good school systems and, you know, attractive suburban living. And so I think we need to think carefully about that, what we put ourselves in a position to have to vote on every other Thursday. So I think it's interesting. Commissioner LaForge.
Yep, I'll only respond to Commissioner Govine and Powers. Anybody else that's for I'm agreeing with everything you're saying until you say, except for the Salazar one because it's ugly to do that, and that's where I disagree. I don't want to over require which way your door must face. What if it's diagonal? What if it's this way and you're standing here and your right shoulder's towards the street and you're safe and you're using your key, but no, your door can't be there. It's got to be here. I think it's enough to say you orient your house to the front. That's arguably too much, but okay, fine. So you don't want somebody building their backyard facing the street and they drive around the back and it's nothing but a wall and you're segregating people where they don't even see each other. Fine, let's activate the street. But to say you must have your door facing a particular way, I hear you saying you don't want to do that except for the Salazar because it's ugly. Here's the deal. I think some of these infills are ugly. I think a box house is ugly, but I'm not sitting here saying I don't want your house because it's ugly. Out somewhere, if that's what people want to buy and if that's what's more affordable and if that's what the developers are building, and the way they fit that in there is somebody wants a 2-car garage. Well, now they don't have room also for a door. It's got to be to the side. That's fine with me. I'm not going to say, no, that's ugly to me. One of our commissioners a long time ago referred to them as a snout house. It was funny, and he's right. I think they're ugly. But I'm not going to tell a developer or a buyer of that house that they can't build it because it's ugly to me, because it may not be ugly to them. It may be a home as opposed to an apartment, and that's what they want. They can afford it. Maybe that it's a home in Oklahoma City instead of some horrible place in a horrible city. So if that's what they want, if it's oriented towards the street, that's sufficient for me. They can put the door facing that way or that way. They can put a window facing the street or not. I'm not going to start telling people where they put the doors and the windows. Respectful disagreement, but I think the whole it's ugly. I can start talking about in your area, there's some really ugly stuff being built, in my opinion, but that doesn't matter.
To your point, I think there's a distinction between infill and new development. But I think I lean, if I just had to lean somewhere, I'd lean closer to you of saying, it depends. I mean, on the circumstances, on the developer, on how it affects the costs and all of those things. I think with infill, we're always the push and pull that we're always in is how are we still keeping the character and aesthetic of the neighborhood and respecting that while at the same time adding density and having reasonable standards that allow a developer to be on reasonable notice on what they can build and what they should be building. You know, and I think it's a balance, but it's not an easy one.
And I would say, I think your point is very well taken. We should all be a little more careful of the language we use. It doesn't have anything to do with whether it's ugly or not, because everybody disagrees on that. You get 10 people in a room, and you'll get 10 different opinions about things. But there are issues with respect to, the term you used, activating the street, you know. And that's just one of them, the orientation.
Yep.
And how do you manifest that orientation? A simple, easy way is with the door. It may not always be the right way, and I agree with that.
It could be porch.
I think a lot of what you guys are talking about is wayfinding, and not arguing the aesthetics of the one in question, the Salazar. The one thing about it, I think it's important for people, when you pull up in front of a house, try to figure out how do I get in the house and what's the path. Now, I mean, part of that's obviously the sidewalk that goes to the door, but I think wayfinding from the street is an important aspect to a lot of what you guys are trying to address.
I don't know about that. I'll say, I'm in Quail Creek. There's some Frank Lloyd Wright inspired houses. They're beautiful. They've got some great houses. They build these really weird walls in front of their house. You can't even see the front door. I'm going, this is crazy. But you love it because it's unique. And if the person who wants to live in that house doesn't want you to be able to find their front door, that's fine. My neighbor directly across the street, I'm uncomfortable because I feel like I'm already in his house by the time I knock on the door. It's because it's a weird Frank Lloyd Wright whatever. So if a builder wants to build a house where he can't find the door, now, emergency services, whatever, I don't know, but I still let people do what they want to do, whether building it or buying it. Let them put the doors and the windows where they want. Other than activate the street, we'll all, I think, at least agree to that. Let's have, I almost don't even want to say that, but we'll activate the street, sure.
Sounds like
orient towards the street.
Sounds like we're gonna have a lot of fun when we get to that code update with what's an appropriate standard.
I do agree, you can activate the street without facing the door to the street.
Yeah.
And that can be, yes, absolutely. No offense to Salazar, that was just not to single anyone out. We were just referring to the case we just happened to hear, but if Salazar is listening.
Well, I will say this, I guess, unless you have anything else, Commissioner LaForge, I'll say this, I appreciate the update about the code. My concern is still density. I think that affordable housing will continue to be an issue. I think that building dense developments, I think there's a false narrative among neighbors, including my own, that the more dense it is, the uglier it is, the less attractive it is, the more crime there is, the more problems there are. And I think the more that our code can protect people but also allow for density is a good thing. This city is growing fast. And if we want to avoid sprawl, it means our infill development needs to be more dense, but it also needs to be respectful of the neighborhoods that it exists in. And I think that's a really important thing. I'd like to see fewer things come to us, actually. I'd like to see property owners have more authority to do the things that they know are the right thing, that pencil economically, but yet respect the integrity and character of neighborhoods. So I know that's a tough balance. You'll have a very difficult job, but I look forward to further discussions about this with the code update. I do think that with the challenges that we face today with TEs and amendments, I think that I would love to explore with staff, with all of us, ways that we can be more efficient in the way that we are addressing some of these challenges with wording and language and the scope of our authority. And maybe that means we need another study session about what some of these phrases, where we have authority and where we do not. It might be good to have a study session that tells us what we can and cannot do with the plat. What is reasonable within our authority within a plat?
Amen.
What is reasonable within our authority within a specific plan?
Amen.
And if we can be clear about that, maybe it'll be easier for us to navigate these questions. Because I respect the view about specific plan, and Sarah read the specific statute or ordinance, and that all makes sense to me. I know we have had cases where the exact opposite was presented, and this commission made decisions based on our inability to make changes to a specific plan because of its conformance with the underlying PUD. And because of staff rendering a decision that it was in conformance, and then it limited our ability to take action. And so that is an issue where I know we've taken the opposite position. We have done that action. So I'd love to know clearly where our authority lies and where it doesn't. And maybe I'm saying a study session, and that's not what we need. Maybe we just need a memo. Right. And I'm sorry, I'm just creating more work for Susan. But I do think it's important we know the answer to that question if we're going to have.
It feels like we're doing this and then that.
Exactly.
Don't know which way.
Which way is it? And so I think we need to be clear. So I hope we can have some further discussion. I'm probably not being clear, so I apologize for being inarticulate about the issue. But I hope we can have some more discussion about how we can just more efficiently address some of these issues and understand our authority with greater clarity. So appreciate you all's patience, appreciate staff's work. I know you have a very difficult job, and I appreciate it. Planning Department, anything?
No, nothing more.
Council staff, other than me asking for more memos? No citizens to be heard. Where's Mr. Warrior? I hope you're watching us on TV. You don't care about us anymore, Mr. Warrior? What's going on? Maybe, hopefully you're on vacation. Other business, I don't see any citizens to be heard. All right, well, having reached the end of this agenda, we are now adjourned.